welcome to the FACTORYISH podcast, and episode number 7, and we're here with Derek Putnam. Welcome.
Thanks for having me on, Kirk. It's been a while since you and I have done anything together, so I'm excited about this.
I know. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's always good catching up with old friends, and we'll go ahead and make a toast. I got Stella, some Crown down that way, and
good old highlight.
Yep. And we also got a couple other drinks. We got Crystal Skull vodka as well, and that is Dan Aykroyd's vodka that he has created, and it's really smooth. I enjoyed that. You had a sip of that, right?
I do agree.
Yes? Get your stamp of approval. So, all right, let's jump into it. We're getting back into the new year. And Zip, you're into the shop, close to the airport now, yep. And you've also hired some more staff. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. Yep.
So how many how many guys you got on the crew now?
We're 18 now total, and so we have 4 at the body shop, which our old shop is now body and paint only.
Right near downtown.
Right, and then so 14 at the new shop.
Okay.
You know, including myself. And so we have myself, our operations parts manager, Austin, and then Alan, who's kind of our maintenance guy, you know. Like he's been with us a while now. He's got a YouTube channel.
Yep, he's the one that's been posting for the,
Yeah.
drive-by cars with Alan, right?
Yep. And so, like, we're the guys not working on the cars pretty much, you know, and keeping the system running, you know, and then everybody else is busting butt and, you know, working on stuff.
Yeah, it was funny. Like, every time I would go over to the old shop, it was packed, and people were literally stacked on top of each other, and it's like, oh, dude, when you get the new space, it's going to be so nice. And I go over the other day, and it's packed, and you're still stacked. So I guess that's just the comfort workflow.
Right. I mean, you know, it's a volume increase. It was needed, you know, it didn't work out exactly how I thought, as far as, we're gonna have all this space and everything's gonna work wonderfully, you know, and we're pretty jammed in there, but you know, it's definitely a different kind of jammed in there. You know, everybody does have a work area, you know, you can open the doors all the way and not hit the car next to you. So, you know, it's much better.
That's cool.
We've actually, you know, I track every week on performance, and, you know, so basically we have, if we exceed what is operation cost, shop buys lunch, you know, every week. And so we've actually had a couple weeks of being able to buy lunch.
Good. Now, that new location is also where, if anybody wanted to meet with you, get a quote or what have you, they would go to that location. Yeah, the main hub.
The body shop's pretty much not open to the public unless you have a car being worked on.
And what's that address at that location?
1211 East 26th Place.
Yep.
Sanford.
So basically, if anybody knows that area, you go to this airport, you turn by Holly, which used to be Super Chip, and then it's one little zigzag, one block down, one block over.
Much you can take it all the way down, make a right, and then we're right there.
Yeah.
There's a couple different ways there.
Yep, cool. That's awesome, man. The other thing recently that we were able to do is Jason Davis had his car show downtown Sanford. What was the name of that show? It's a Volkswagen show. Does he have a name for that?
I think.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll put it on the screen here. So, but no, the show was awesome.
That show was awesome.
It was a lot of fun. It was cool.
I missed you.
Yeah.
I had to leave earlier.
Yeah, we got there, and all of a sudden it was like, the live music's tight. Like, it's really cool. So we went over to, I think it's called Moto 73 or
right, which is actually what the heck they call that? What the building business in there? I forgot what it is. But, you know.
Well, they definitely are doing like live music there.
Right,
they had a stage set up inside and outside, and all the bikes that were on display were kind of like, you know, cafe racer. There was a couple choppers, but some really cool, unique
Kinda
bikes.
everything.
Yeah,
You know, it was like more about just motorcycle culture.
Yep. And good music. And then they were giving away, free Apple Jack.
Nice.
I don't know if that was it, if that holds up to the crown, but it was free, so it was a win.
They say free is for me.
So we were hung out over there for a while, and then walked around and checked out the cars, and like the whole Volkswagen vibe is totally chill. You know what I mean? You would kind of expect that.
Yeah.
Like we were walking by one Volkswagen and it had like a caution sign on the windshield and it said, "Hey, caution, we're high." I was like, all right, we're amongst good people here, you know.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun.
Every one of them is different.
I know.
You know,
Yeah.
I like it was cool. I keep missing his show every year because it was on the weekend that I have an annual get together with some friends, and then he changed it this year, so
Yeah.
I was able to go.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think I've ever been to a collection of Volkswagens of that size before.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone has, like, you know, just whatever. It's a real extension of their personality. You know,
Yeah.
like you go to a Good Guys show or
Right.
shows like that, and everything's super badass and sweet. And
Yep.
I mean, not the same, but a little more of a narrower,
Yeah.
range.
Yeah, there it was cool because there was like Amelia Island caliber restorations, and then there's
Shit
total
boxes.
shit boxes. And it was from everything from 50s to even the 80s style. There was a couple cool GTI like Golf
There's even some
rabbits
new
and stuff.
There was a
Yeah, there was Yep.
newer Bug,
Yep.
like the newest body style.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. I thought it was like super killer.
Is that the one that was like laying frame? It
Yeah.
had like red wheels and
Oh, no,
kind of
it
silver.
was
wasn't
silver. It was.
Yeah, it was silver and it had red wheels, didn't it?
I don't remember red wheels.
Yeah. But anyway, it was dope. I thought it was cool too. The coolest part, so I went there with Sherry and Connor, and then my oldest, Sabrina, and her husband, Gabe, met us there too. So we're walking along the show and everything. And then, Sherry just goes, hey. I'm like, what? And she goes, check it out. And she points like this. And it was the bus that you did.
Oh.
And it said FACTORYISH on the sticker. I was like, oh, hell
yeah.
Representing the FACTORYISH.
Right. I don't know how we got in there, but
Yeah, it's all good. We were there. But you worked on that bus. Oh, God, that's probably been
quite
like
a while ago.
8 years ago.
John Sternberg.
Yeah. That's a cool bus.
Yeah, it was cool. It was, we didn't do anything to the outside body.
Mm-hmm.
We did a full deal restoration on the undercarriage and suspension, brakes, wheels, motor,
Yep.
wiring, the whole deal. You
Yep.
know, like, it was operating on. It is a Volkswagen. It had its stuff.
Yeah.
But, it was a cool project. We just polished the old paint. Like,
Yep.
we had to throw away the buffing pad from running over rust. And
Can't reuse that one. And then the last thing too, while we were there, we had lunch there at Henry's Depot where the show was. The show. Have you ever been to Sanford, Derek?
No, I have not.
So
other than the airport, that's the only place I've been
Oops.
to.
They have this. Henry's Depot was an old train station that they kind of converted into like a food court, and there's like a bar on one side and all these different restaurants inside. I think there's like 8 different restaurants and a coffee shop, and a really cool little place. And this is where the show was. Well, of course, Sherry had a TikTok that said, "World's best chicken sandwich is at Henry's Depot in Sanford." So of course we had to test that theory and was like, how good is this chicken sandwich? Have you ever had it?
No.
All right, so the little Jamaican place that's in there?
Yeah.
So they do this, they bread the chicken and they use rice flour. I don't know if you've ever used rice flour with frying chicken, but it's 10 times better than regular flour. And then they put a scoop of macaroni salad on it, and of course the pickles and the whole bit, like a Chick-fil-A sandwich. And I will agree, that was the best damn chicken
Awesome.
sandwich I ever had. So Henry's Depot, it was good. It was delicious. So
yeah, I asked Lane what his favorite car was when we left. He was like, I like the one with the V8 in the front.
like, all right, yes.
Okay, I accept.
I think Connor's favorite one was the one with the gun on the top.
Right.
That one's pretty cool. Like,
I don't know with that either, no.
So, well, Derek, thanks for joining us. I know we got a lot of history together, and we'll jump into all of that. But drag racing has pretty much been in your blood from day one, if I'm not mistaken. So why don't we start there? Let's dive in. How did you get into drag racing?
I didn't really have a choice. My dad took me to the racetrack. So, not quite day one. I went to what is now defunct Palm Beach International Raceway down in Palm Beach Gardens.
Yep.
But back then it was Moroso Motorsports Park. Dick Moroso from Moroso Performance Products had bought it, I want to say, in 82 or 83, and had done a lot of work to it and everything. And so my dad at the time is selling Pontiacs. So the whole car culture thing is there. And we go to the racetrack. He actually, ironically, ends up working there for, I want to say, maybe 6 months, running the Kronbeck clocks upstairs. So this is back when you had a handwritten time slip, and it basically would have your reaction time, your ET, and your mile an hour, and you would have to climb to go up in the tower and get it. There was no time slip booth, quote unquote. So that was my official introduction to it. 3 years later, my dad buys a 1967 Camaro that was a race car. It was built out of a junkyard, so it's all we've ever known it as, and he still owns that car today.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
That was my introduction to drag racing.
Yep. And you raced that Camaro for a while too, didn't you?
I've only made one pass in that car.
No way, really?
Yep. So I was 17 years old.
Okay.
My dad had just, ironically, he had lost first round in his class. I'm still in my Chevelle that I had owned at the time in my class. He brings the car up to the staging lanes. I think we're in round 3 of eliminations, and I'm like, I don't understand why he's coming up here with it. So he says, you've always wanted to drive the car, here's your chance. So long story short, I make a pass in it, and I think I ran within about 3/1000ths of what he ran first round.
Nice.
So I take it back to the pit area, I shut it off. He says, get out and give me the keys. And I said, okay, what's the problem?
What did I do wrong?
Did I do something wrong? No. You proved that you can handle this car just fine, and I'm not ready to give up the seat yet. And I'm like, okay, so we're good. So that was the first and only pass I ever made it, and I want to say that was in 93 or 94.
Okay.
So, but like I said, he still has the car now, and I have a feeling that at some point I'll probably end up getting it.
That's cool.
We always joked about the fact that he would be buried in it.
Yeah.
But
dig a hole and back it in.
We'll bury you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
We got you, Dad.
Yep. We'll see how long those panels last underneath.
So that car and when you drove it, what configuration was it then? Was it a small block car, big block car?
It's always been a small block car.
Okay.
So when he bought it, it was in primer.
Yep.
It had the old school American Racing slot wheels on it, which it still has on today.
Nice.
It was a 327, ran, I want to say, mid-12s, which for 1985 is not bad.
That was smoking,
it's not anything to write home about, but it's not bad. That motor lasted approximately 6 months before he scattered it.
Yeah.
So it's had pretty much 2 or 3 iterations of a 355. Nothing high tech or what have you. My dad always built something very simple. Flat top pistons, iron cylinder head, single plane intake. The car now will run 1130s, 1140s, and unfortunately with PBIR closing, which we lived 5 minutes from there.
Yeah.
His next closest racetrack is Immokalee Raceway. It's over 2 hours away, so he's not a big traveler, so he doesn't race as much as he used to.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
But it's always been a small block car since he bought it.
That's cool.
Yeah, I used to live near there, and when it changed to PBIR.
Back in 2009.
Yep.
Yeah, that was when, unfortunately, going down history road here, this is the kind of useless stuff that lives in my head. When Dick Moroso passed away in, I want to say, 98 or 99, his son, Rick, he had 2 sons. Ricky, who was an up-and-coming NASCAR racer, and unfortunately he died in a tragic car accident, not on the racetrack. But then his other son, Rick, who runs Moroso Performance Products to this day, neither one of them wanted to do anything with the racetrack. So he left it to his daughter, who ended up selling it to what became part of the equity group that now owns it. And when they bought it, they closed it down for, I want to say, close to a year and completely re-engineered the place. And to be honest, it was really cool in how they changed it, because you've been there. Kirk, I don't know if you've ever been there or not.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so Palm Beach is, in my opinion, this is probably what makes it as sad as it is about the fact that it's not being used. It's literally located right across the street from where Pratt & Whitney used to have the majority of their operations.
Yeah.
So it is within a 5-mile radius for noise. So you could race at that track at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and no one can say a thing.
Yeah.
Which is, the enemy of a lot of racetracks.
Yep.
Not only that, but high land value.
Yep.
It's also surrounded by wetlands. So you can't build anything else around it. So when you consider the fact that that place, the only downfall it had of it is it had a 2.6-mile road course, but you couldn't run the road course at the same time you ran the drag strip because the road course used the shutdown of the drag strip
Okay.
and the staging lane area of the drag strip to run the road course.
Yep.
So on days that we would go out there when they'd have no road course action, we'd be on the racetrack at 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. When they had a track rental, we wouldn't get in the gate until 5 o'clock. So when they re-engineered the place and they did an all-concrete quarter mile, they completely separated the two. The good part was you could run both of them at the same time, which they would do at times. The bad part was it completely eliminated left-hand side pit area and it eliminated left-hand side grandstands because now you've got the drag strip on one side and you've got the straightaway of the road course on the other side, and there's nothing between them except for a concrete wall and a big fence. So it worked, but without getting too deep into it, there was a lot of money that was still owed. Some people went out of business. It really wasn't run the way it should have been run. The company that owns it, again, without going too far into it, bought 5 racetracks. Unfortunately, 2 of them are now permanently closed. The other 3 got purchased by either their original owners or by somebody to keep them alive. I mean, basically, when it comes down to it, they basically bought them as a land investment.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yep.
All right, so you were driving you said you had a Chevelle. Were you
Correct.
drag racing that first?
I was.
Okay, so what was the Chevelle? What year?
So the Chevelle was a 1972.
Uh-huh. Yay.
It would help if I didn't have ice in my mouth when I'm telling you that story. So, ironically, the same guy who found me my Nova, who my dad has known for the better part of 40 years, he finds me this 1972 Chevelle. Guy who originally buys it out of New York, dies. Nobody in his family wants it because it's triple green. It's a 307 slug. It doesn't go very fast. I bought it for $1,000 at the age of 14.
Nice.
Now, at the time, I'm working at a local grocery store, so I can afford to buy that. I ran it for a couple of years where it really wasn't that fast. It ran 16s for 2 years. Then we put a 355 in it, and it ran 14s, and then I took it to college.
Yep.
So that was what I started with.
Oh, okay. So you had the Chevelle when you moved to Gainesville.
Originally, yes.
Oh, really?
So I
Okay.
took it with me to college, yeah.
All right, so you're in college, you had the Chevelle. Then where does the Nova enter that?
So the Nova comes in the fact that the Chevelle had a meeting with a couple of trees. And unfortunately, it moved to the firewall more than it should have. And let's just say it was like, yeah, it's my first car. I have some attachment to it, but not to that extent of spending that amount of money.
Yeah.
So the Nova was an even better find because it was a one-family car with, I want to say, about 90,000 miles on it, and it was another triple green car. Now, I wasn't looking for triple green by any stretch on either one of them. And at first, I almost changed the Chevelle over to a different color. As a matter of fact, it had a black interior in it. I was starting to convert it so I could paint it something else. When I bought the Nova and I saved the money up to have it painted, I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? 2 of my really good friends, John and Jason Rollins, both have Novas. One of them is blue, one of them's red. Maybe I'll just leave it green while I'm in college. That way I won't have to spend all the money masking it and taping it and what have you. They can just reshoot it and we'll call it good. And now it's gotten to the point where, with a few people aside, there's a lot of people that actually embrace the fact that it's a factory green color and it's different. You know, everybody else has the black, silver, red, blue, orange, yellow, whatever cars.
Yeah, I think the green, though, is kind of like the staple color for Novas. I know most Novas that I've seen that are, would you agree? I mean,
Butch had
right, he had a green one.
Original one. It was cool.
Yeah, and there's a couple other in the drag racing scene, too, that are green Novas as well.
Yeah.
I can't quite put a finger on who they are, but
yeah, I can't think of the guy's name, but ironically, there is a car out there that's very close to mine in the fact that it has almost the same wheels as mine and it has a vinyl top on it. Other than that, they're almost identical looking. They're the same factory green, forest green color, and they're both 1970s. But I don't think that honestly has been accepted until I want to say probably the last 10, 15 years.
Oh, really? Okay.
I mean, again, if you look at the fact that, in my opinion, just my opinion, cars that are, for lack of a better color to latch onto than green, I would bring up a brown or a butternut yellow. It's a color that nobody goes out and says, I want this, unless they want to fly under the radar.
Yeah.
It's a sleeper color.
It's a sleeper.
Right.
Yep.
So ironically, that's the kind of thing where it's like, yes, you see them, but they're normally not restored. They're usually beaten up, or they have paint chips, what have you.
Yep.
But those are also the cars that people are winning money with on the streets. Well, that was obviously never my intention, because I didn't have that kind of money or time to get into that. I just decided to leave it there for necessity's sake. And then, as I mentioned, it just ended up becoming where screw it, I've embraced it, I'll just go ahead and keep it that color. I even went through the point of where the last time I had it restored back in 2007, when we stripped it down, where it was okay, you have a blank canvas, you can paint it whatever color you want. And I actually went around to dealerships for a month looking at different green colors in the light, trying to decide if I wanted to paint it something different, and I decided to go back with the factory green color, which ends up working out well.
Dude,
because
it looks so good.
I agree. Like I said, it's grown on me to this point, but it's like, if somebody asked me if I wanted to do something different, it would be hard for me to not say my next favorite color, which is blue. I've had 2 blue cars, so it's hard for me to not say that. But then at the same time, I wonder, okay, would the car have been as noticed if it was blue, because blue is more common?
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, no, Sherry's asked me multiple times that whenever I go to paint the Le Mans, what color are we going to go with it? And my favorite color is blue as well. Like my 69 Firebird was that metallic, that light metallic blue, that was 67 Corvette color, and the Camaros, and all of them used it, and I love that color,
Right. Yeah, you're talking about the Marina blue color on Chevy side, but then Pontiac called it something different because they had the differences in names, even though they were the same codes.
Right.
But whenever I see that body style on that, it looks good.
Right.
But that's got red interior, and if I would do anything, that would go black. I think black with red interior is just kind of that gangster like.
Well, what's ironic, not to cut you off, what's ironic about that color combination is there's a guy that has a 9-second factory appearing stock tire Firebird that's done in that same color combination. It's a 68 Firebird, white with red interior. And the thing that I love about color combinations like that is you don't see that in today's cars. Unless you get something that is really rare, where they're gonna, where the manufacturers decide to throw caution to the wind and the checkbook out the window, they don't offer anything except some kind of black or gray, or some kind of tan or slate. So when you see something like that, I think that almost can become the conversation point at a car show of, it's not something with black interior, it's not something with gray interior or tan interior, it's something where, holy crap, they used to make it like that, and that can become your icebreaker to start the conversation.
Yep. All right, so you got the Nova because the Chevelle wrapped itself around the tree.
Yes.
The progression of the Nova, how did it turn into kind of the street machine that you made it into? Because when I met you, that car was extremely competitive, and you drove the hell out of that thing. You would take it. That thing was never trailered. It was driven to every event, and you did it before they were doing drag and drive events. You were doing drag and drive events.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up. That's almost exactly right, and I feel like maybe that's why I fall into the role that I'm currently doing, because I didn't own a truck or a trailer until 2004. So at that point, I've already had the car for 7 years. So if I want to race it, or if I want to do something with it, it has to be reliable enough to get me where I'm going, be able to beat on it, and then get home. I can remember one time I stripped out an axle stud, or a lug stud, in Atlanta Dragway. So I'm 7 hours away from Gainesville, but I drove it there and drove it home. I just drove it on 4 lugs instead of 5.
Right.
But it's still one of those things where, if you look at the fact that you had to make conscious enough decisions to be able to say, okay, this car's still going to get driven to work, this car's still going to get highway time, so putting something that's going to make it faster at the drag strip isn't going to make any sense, because then it's going to become where your ears are going to be, absolutely scorched from high RPM. So I think that that's part of the reason why, even though I own a truck and trailer now, that I always took a more balanced approach to the car, because I never wanted it to become where it was one purpose only.
Okay. Now, did you meet Rollins, and remind me of his first name again.
Jason.
Jason. So
Yes.
did you meet Jason in college?
No, we actually met the year before I left to go to college. Excuse me. And he and I were both racing at Moroso. At the time, his family, minus his brother, lived in Fort Myers. So they lived on the West Coast. So they used to race at DeSoto, which is now Bradenton Motorsports Park. Well, they would travel across the state every 2 weeks to race at Moroso because they were running a points program. They had a big turnout, etc. So Jason's older brother, John, had already graduated from college. He was racing over there. He lived in West Palm. So that was kind of how I met them. We all ran the same class. Now, ironically, Jason had his associate's degree because he's 3 years older than me. I was going into school at UF. He was going to get his actual bachelor's degree at UF. So we both ended up going to UF at the same time. And not like maybe social media makes it this way, but in my opinion, car guys were not something that was highly desired by anybody. So, especially not when you go to college and there's frat parties or keg parties or what have you. So Jason and I used to hang out and go cruising back when gas was, I'm dating myself again, when it was $1 a gallon and, $20 would get you a fun weekend basically.
Yeah,
So,
but we got to admit, car guys do bring the cool burnouts.
Yes, we do that.
I mean,
we may not bring all the girls to the equation, but we do bring
some
we
cool
do bring
burnouts.
cool
We
burnouts.
bring all the
Everybody-
guys.
They're all talking about that. They're like, remember?
Yes. So he and I met a year
I had
year
no
before
idea
we
you
went to
guys
college.
met down south.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And then both of you guys came up here. So Zip, so you're aware, Jason has a shop in Gainesville, and he's had that shop for, probably going on 25 years so?
A little bit longer than that. They moved
Yeah.
up in, I want to say, 97.
Okay.
Yeah. His parents decided they wanted out of Fort Myers.
Yep.
Ironically, the catalyst was Jason was done with college at that point. As much as everybody thinks, it's, Gainesville Raceway, it's where the Gator Nationals are held and whatever. If you remove the university from Gainesville, it is literally like any other town you would pass through in Florida and be out of in 10 minutes and not even realize.
Yep.
So as awesome as Gainesville Raceway is, and yes, I'm biased when I say that, at that time there was no speed shop anywhere. So it's like, okay, your choices are you're going to call Summit in Georgia 5 hours away and get something, or you're going to find a speed shop in South Florida or Central Florida, which, as you and I both know, there's tons of it because more metropolis.
Gainesville doesn't even you've lived there 30,
Since 94, yeah.
So, but the car scene in Gainesville compared to damn near any other city in Florida is kind of lackluster.
It is, very much so. And I think part of that is because of the college scene. You do get car enthusiasts that come in there, but it's mostly, I hate to say it, but it's like if you look at what you and I would have driven going to high school or college back in the day versus what kids drive nowadays where their parents want them to be in something that's safe, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
It's not going to be the kind of thing you're going to take to a Cars and Coffee.
Yeah.
And they do have a Cars and Coffee in Gainesville, and it's not bad, but the number of American cars are there I can count on two hands.
Yeah.
Right.
Whereas if you go to Ocala, on the other hand, and you go to the Harley-Davidson location, they get 200-300 cars there on a nice Sunday, and a lot of them are classic or American-based cars.
Dude, even Bernie's. Have you been out and seen
I haven't
any of
been
their
there
shows?
since they've started doing their stuff.
Dude, they've been doing like some night shows and
Yeah, it's an
Cars and
extension of the
Coffee.
Ocala
Yep.
Cars and Coffee After Dark that they used to do. The guy who used to do that actually handed the reins of that over to Bernie's because he moved to, I want to say, North Carolina.
Well, the guy that started Bernie's too is in running NHRA too.
Josh Hart, yep.
Yep. So yeah, he got support from R&L, and he's been racing that, and it's been
Yeah, he's been running
extremely
Top Fuel
successful.
now for, I want to say, I think this is his third year doing it. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, to bring that full circle, there was no speed shop in Gainesville. Jason and his parents talked about it. They decided that they wanted out of Fort Myers because it was just like anything in South Florida. It was getting really populated, heavy, and everything was getting overdeveloped and what have you. So they decided they wanted to come north. So it allowed Jason to work with his father again, which he had done when he was younger and in high school. And Jason is still running that business today. So
Yep. All right, so you and Jason got the Nova College again. How fast was the Nova, and how did it transition? Like, what was the motor setup that you had in it?
So
when you started racing here in Gainesville.
Okay, so I was always raised around small blocks, so that's basically all the car ever had in it. And the first small block that Jason and his family built for me was in it for about 7 years, mostly while I was still driving it, mostly with the exception of like driving a beater back and forth to where I used to work.
Yeah.
Because that was an 80-mile round trip, and if I'm going to do that in a car with no overdrive, obviously my gas bill is going to be expensive. So I want to say that lasted until 2003.
Okay.
And at that point, we built the first of two, like, relatively decently put together small blocks, meaning we didn't use any stock parts in it. We used a stock block, but it had aftermarket crank rods, etc. So at the fastest the car ever was on motor with a 383, which is a 350 with an extra quarter stroke in the crankshaft, it ran 1095 at 122 miles an hour on the motor. It's been 980s on nitrous, but I haven't had nitrous on the car in a really long time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just didn't really see the need for it. So.
And then that car, well, I guess we'll get to that in a little bit. I was going to say it did. Well, let's jump into it. It splashed into the big block realm for a little bit.
Yes.
Right. You
for
were
about 5 years.
At that time, you were writing for
Fastest Streetcar Magazine. That's the NMCA and the NMRA official publication. So at the time, I'd been working for them on the side, writing event coverage and doing car features and so forth for, I want to say, probably about 6 years. And I wanted to build a pro-charged small block. The problem was they had just done a small block build. So they said, let's do a big block build. And they basically said, and I don't really feel any ill will about this considering the magazine industry isn't anywhere close to where it used to be.
Yeah.
They basically said, whatever you can't get donated towards the cause for advertisement, you're on your own. You have to take care of. So Jason and I sat down in his shop with a plethora of books and basically started going, okay, we're going to make this car run to its roll cage certification, which is basically 8.5 seconds in the quarter mile, which for a car that weighs 3,800 pounds means you're probably going to have to make about 12 to 1,300 horsepower.
Yep.
So we sat there and we started speccing stuff out, and we got about a half an hour into it, and he looked at me and he goes, okay, who is this going to appeal to? Because if you think of the pyramid, as you move up, the number of people you're impacting with what you write gets smaller.
Right.
Whereas when you go down, it's wider. So he goes, we have free reign here. Why would we build something that, yes, it's going to make the car run fast. It's going to put good numbers out there, but it's not going to appeal to the masses. What if we took something and built it where it's going to be not cheap, affordable like Junkyard, but it's going to be a lot more attainable for people, especially when we show them every part number, every price. And so I went to Fastest Streetcar at the time, and I talked to the editor, and I said, I will only do this if you allow me free reign to be able to do what I want with it and break the quote-unquote glass ceiling that a lot of magazines had of, I want to report good and bad. I want to talk about what struggles you go through with this, as well as what benefits you get out of this. Because the problems magazines had back then, in my opinion, was you write something, it goes on an engine dyno or a chassis dyno, it makes one pass, and yay, it's a success, and then you never hear another thing about it. So, well, how long did it last? Did it last 5 runs and then it exploded, or did you get 5 years out of it? Was it a good value for what you built? You know, talk about that kind of stuff. So,
and that one did go through.
That one went through some
downs.
issues. Yes. Yeah, we won't go down the realm because I always believe in not burning bridges. But yeah, there were some avenues that shouldn't have been taken. We should have stayed on the straight and narrow and not turned. So. But
well,
no.
when you went through that journey, you and I were working together. So
Correct.
that's a good way to transition into.
Correct.
You were working for. Was it Ron Morris? Or who were you working for down south that did the chassis company?
Chassis engineering.
Chassis engineering.
Right.
Yes.
I was working for them when I first got the Nova. I worked for them for a summer when I took my first year off of college in 3 years trying to decide what I wanted to do as a major because I had finished 3 years of business school. I was not really feeling it. It was kind of dry. And, you know, the whole car thing was always this is going to be your hobby. You're not going to work in it. So I took a summer off to kind of get my bearings. Had applied at National Parts Depot several times and never gotten called. Ironically, it was right after Lollapalooza. Again, dating myself was over. I get a phone call. The next morning of, "Hey, we'd like you to come in and interview." Okay,
this is a bad time. I'm a little hungover.
When do you want me to come in and interview? as soon as you possibly can. All right, I guess I'm getting on the road and I'm going to be in there tomorrow morning. You know, I didn't want to let the chance go by, and so that started me working at National Parts Depot in 1998. So at that point, I had worked at chassis engineering for 3 months, but it was probably never going to be something I was going to continue to do.
Okay.
But it was a lot of fun, though. I mean, basically, being around drag racing made that where it was like a natural fit. And I used to go to the racetrack every week, usually twice a week, sometimes 3 times, and help people tune their suspensions. And they built everything in-house. So it was, if anybody ever had a problem, all I had to do was get up from my desk, go in the back, talk to an engineer about it. We'd get it figured out and fixed, and we'd move on. So it was a lot of fun, but again, it was something that I don't think I would have done long term. But then again, I didn't think I was ever going to do National Parts Depot long term either.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, that's funny because I also had multiple tries to get on board at NPD. Like I literally pressed to get on board with them for almost a year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah. And then finally I was like, all right, I'm hired. And then that's where we met, and we worked together for 10 years, dude.
I think it was almost 11, yeah, because I actually have a photo of you in a winter circle with me at Bradenton Motorsports Park in 2005.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long. That was right about the time that you took over doing marketing, and we were kind of teaming up on doing the GM catalogs for them. So, yeah.
And I had hair.
Yes. I had more hair back then as well, but the hats work well.
Yes, we'll keep it covered. Keep the dome covered.
I'm
buddy.
bald too.
Yeah, whatever, dude.
So
yeah, no, it was man. I have so many good memories of working with you there at NPD, but definitely getting back to the Nova. When I remember when you were working with the magazine and were planning on making that change and going to a big block, and it was like, dude, this car is so stinking reliable. I don't know if I would change it. Because did you not already have won what awards have you won with the car the way that it was set up with a small block? Because you had won a bunch of different events.
At that point, I mean, I really don't like talking about this that much because it was a long time ago, and I feel like I'm washed up as a racer now. But at the time when I made that change, I had won 2 track championships with it, and I want to say 6 or 7 NHRA Wallies with it, which is basically like the highest trophy you could get.
Yep.
So.
And that was the history that he had with that car. And that car, you could take it to a show and win an award with it. It was pristine through and through. There was like, the car's flawless. And
I tried to make it as clean as I could, considering that my first one, it was the form over function kind of thing, whatever. So.
Yeah. So it was just like, Derek, what are you doing, dude? Don't mess up a good thing. Like, his car's been so good to you. And then went down that road, but it was fun. You can't deny it. It was like, all right, let's see what the hell this is going to do.
It got a lot of attention. It got a lot more attention than I honestly ever thought it would. And I was smart enough to not do the typical car guy thing of, I'm going to dive into this and I'm going to sell off everything else. I kept all the stuff I took out of it. So when eventually the big block didn't work, and I mean, granted, again, I mean, we pushed it way beyond what we thought we were going to do. I mean, the whole original intent of that thing was a 900 horsepower big block, and it ended up becoming almost 1,200.
Yeah.
And you learn, okay, stock stuff only lasts so long, or you run a part to a certain extent and then you replace it whether it broke or not.
Right.
So
fatigued.
Yeah.
Or you get to a point and you just go, man, the budget to be in this realm is a different realm, man.
Yeah.
It is. And that's, and again, style changes, taste change, etc.
Yep.
At the time I had access to a 2000 Firebird that I could race, which I did quite well with. And so for me, it was kind of the whole idea of, okay, I've never done anything but this. Let's go ahead and step outside the realm, but in case something, like you said, in case something bad happens, I can always go back, which I ended up, we've come full circle.
Yep.
So, but no, it was a lot of fun. I mean, again, you do get a true awakening for the whole mantra of speed, cost, how fast do you really want to go? It is true. Again, people can make cheap stuff last, but not in a real heavy car, not in something you're going to put 125 to 200 runs on a year. and not without consumables.
Yep.
And that's the problem again, and I'm not blaming anybody in particular, but if all you see is up here, the positives, and you don't look down here and you don't look at the work and the stuff that has to go into it, which magazines can do and social media can do, then it could lead to a false idea of what you're going to get.
Yep. So I know you've already figured out the equation. Horsepower versus money versus...
Right. Well, I haven't figured it out. I know what it is. Doesn't mean I live by it.
All right, so that car and your history of drag racing
Yes.
and the success that you had with it, did that open the door for you to become an editor with the magazines?
I think so.
Or was it somebody that you knew? How did that door open?
Well, I was never officially an editor. Ironically, I got offered a job to do it, but I would have had to move to California to do so. And even though at the time, my wife Cindy and I we had no kids or anything, so we didn't have anything holding us here, but cost of living in California and everything, we decided.
Well, can I interrupt for a second
Sure,
and
go
go,
ahead.
you were doing every task an editor does.
Okay.
It might not have been a
Sure.
title.
Except
Let's
steer
see.
the ship. Sure.
You wrote the article, you took the photos, it pretty much you did
But
all
you would,
that editor
but you would
did.
agree, not to cut you off, but you would agree with me. The thing about in my opinion anyway, the difference between somebody that is a contributing writer or somebody that is a staff writer
Right.
and an editor is
Right.
the editor is the person that has to come up with the ideas and steer the ship, because if they don't sell, then
Yep.
you're out of a job.
Yep, fair
basically.
enough.
So I can keep pitching ideas that in my head sound great, but I'm not looking at their subscription numbers or sales numbers or stuff like that.
Fair
So
enough.
yes, you're right. I was doing some things that an editor would do, but no, I never officially became an editor.
Yeah.
Not at that point anyway.
So how long did you write for them?
I have to think about that for a second. I want to say officially my last article I did for them was 2020 or 2021. So I want to say all in all, probably 17 years.
So when that door closed, was it because the mag opened up, or how was that transition? What was the story
No,
behind that?
it was a multitude of things. It was right about the time that my announcing started taking off, and I just honestly didn't have the time anymore.
Oh, okay, cool. So announcing is what really
It was the catalyst.
made that shift between
Yeah.
writing
They
and
still
doing it.
wanted me to write as much as I could contribute, because as you know, there's tons of publications out there online based that would take stuff in a heartbeat.
Right.
But the problem is that, well, obviously what you get paid for, because based on, it's not you can't hold it in your hand. So there's the tangible money aspect of what you're getting out of it is now tied to sponsorships from companies or endorsements from companies, not necessarily a magazine you can sell. So yeah, when I started announcing in 2020, it was kind of the catalyst that kind of killed it, because not that I wanted to stop writing, but eventually you get to a point where you have to wave the flag and say, okay, I can only do so much, at least, and still sleep somewhat. So something
Okay,
has to
well,
give.
here's an interesting fun fact. When was it when all the magazines basically just fell?
You're talking about when Source Interlink / EMAP,
Yep.
whatever.
Yep.
Oh, you're going to ask me that one. I want to say probably somewhere between 2013 and 2016, because I remember the Tampa location closed.
Yep.
Because you and I used to talk about that because you
Yep.
were still at NPD at the time. I
Yep.
don't think you left until 2015. So we talked about the fact that there was a growing conglomerate of magazines that were all being pulled together. You looked at the fact that there used to be Peterson Publishing, Argus Publishing, I forget who. Was it Dobbs Publishing that used to do Mustang Monthly? So you have all these magazines, a lot of which are similar in content but being run out of a different place. So they have their own spin, they have their own focus.
Yep.
Then you get an investment company that comes in and buys all of them and basically just goes, we're going to put them all in one basket right here. And at one point, because the guy that you and I both know, Jim Camposano, he was in New Jersey. He comes down here to Tampa and ends up running Muscle Mustangs and Fast Forwards, which, again, in addition to, I want to say at the time, Super Chevy, High Performance Pontiac, and there might have been one more, were all based out of New Jersey. And Evan Smith used to be based out of New Jersey as well. Well, then that branch closes first. Now we're to, okay, we have Tampa and we have California. And then they decide we're just going to do everything out of California.
Yep.
So they take this massive location in Tampa, including a studio, and they just shut it down.
Yep.
And at the same time, like he said, they kill probably 75% of their magazine titles.
I know. And the whole industry was like flooded with all these editors
Writers, basically,
and writers that are just like, give me work, I don't care.
Right.
But you made it through that storm, man. You were still writing through all of that.
I think part of the reason that it was an easy decision for me is because I wasn't doing it as a full-time job.
Yeah.
So I think that was part of it. Ironically, somebody that you and I both know, Steve Bauer, actually ran it. I ran into him at Sick Week, and he and I were talking about how much his job has changed with the fact that he does stuff for multiple entities now. Just again, because unfortunately, what used to pay decently, like not great, but decently, when you had advertisers and stuff was in print and you had subscribers and all that. Well, the internet, for lack of a better way to say it, is free. Yep. There's nothing controlling the cost other than your bandwidth and being able to keep something up. So
everybody was struggling to find value.
Correct.
In it. Yep, it was.
And it sucks, in my opinion, because there's a lot of great stuff that is not going to probably get written because people have found new places to move on to. For example, working with parts companies, car companies, writing reviews, writing product descriptions, stuff like that. Like Mark Houlihan, for example, works for Speedway Motors now. That's a guy who knows more about classic Mustangs than most people does. Yeah. But necessity is necessity. You got to put a roof over your head somehow.
Yeah. And it was definitely just such a weird time because it was one of those things where the magazines had made the value of marketing in their publications so high. I mean, you remember, you saw the budgets of what we paid and being in different magazines, and then all of a sudden the bottom just completely dropped.
Right.
It was just like overnight. It's like, hey, this internet thing, it's kind of changed it all, you know?
Right.
And it was just like, holy shit, they were really struggling to keep advertisers, and it was just like, look, we'll put you on the back cover for a fraction of the price of what, you know, you used to pay 30 pages deep, you know. Right. It was definitely a weird time.
Yeah.
It was wild.
To build on that, for example, one of the things I know you and I used to do together was when National Parts Depot would have a Ford and Mustang show every January. Yep. I'm probably getting the figure wrong. It might be a little bit inflated. But the deal that we had at the time was because we allowed the Ford-based publications that were out of that conglomerate to come in and sell subscriptions. And National Parts Depot held how many manufacturers could come in. In other words, it wasn't a free-for-all. We didn't have 50 vendors. We focused more on the people and the cars. Yeah. And we brought in maybe half a dozen vendors, I would say, if that. Well, what EMAP / Source Interlink used to do was they would give us 2 months in 2 different magazines. They give us a full page for free. That was their contribution. Well, back then, a full-page ad would cost you probably $5,000 to $10,000 because you thought about how much circulation that meant. Right. To a car show, that could be the difference between 250 people showing up and 1,000 people showing up because everybody gets to see it. Not only that, it's a car show in Florida in January where everybody else is cold and they're looking for a reason to get out, so why not? Well, like Kirk said, the problem is once you eliminate any kind of competition and you only have, at the time, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 magazines total now that are around the car and truck industry as a whole. Now what you can command out of that is going to be way less because you don't have all the avenues to appeal to.
Yeah. I will tell you though, that budget was completely blown. Remember when we used to go out for dinner on the night before the show? Before Rick started throwing a party at his house? Right. And we would go out to dinner. We went, have you ever heard of Mark's Prime? In downtown Ocala, so it's like the most top tier restaurant, and we had the whole back room. We had probably 40, 50 people. Yeah. All of us were drinking. All of us were ordering anything off the menu because at the time that would have been
Source Interlink was basically paying they were paying the bills basically.
So somebody in accounting must have saw that bill and went, what the hell is this?
Right. But, the problem is that I can remember, or not the problem, but what I remember from every year was it's kind of like for lack of a better comparison, it's like Black Friday.
Yeah.
If you have a magazine special that's always on Black Friday,
Oh, yeah.
then people are going to be like, nope, I'm going to wait, and I'm going to get it at this discount all the time. So if we sell more of it at a less price, we're going to end up making more money than if we try and sell it at a full price.
Yep.
And that was what you and I always saw every year at that Ford show, was that everybody would storm the tent Saturday morning and go, I want to get out there and I want to chug away on stuff. And not only that, they had a limited edition shirt that they made that once they were gone, they were gone. You couldn't buy them. You had to subscribe in order to get one. And they became a hot commodity. Like, we had people that, when Kirk and I were doing this, they had people that would come up to us and offer us probably, 3 or 4 times, I would think, what that shirt cost to produce, because they wanted it, because it was dated. It was only made in certain quantities. And once it was out of there, it was out of there. Well, I'm sure that, like you said, the advertising and the accounts payable probably looked at that bill and went, "Oh my God, why are we doing this?" And then the flip side was, "Okay, here's how many subscriptions we sell every year. All right, let's keep doing it." So that's probably what happened.
Funny story, though. I don't know if I ever told you this or not, but that night we were at Mark's Prime, and everybody's kind of wrapping up, and I sat next to Rick, and the Eatons were on the other side of me, right? And we're wrapping up, and all of a sudden they set the bill in between Rick and I. And Rick looked down at the bill, and he looked at me. And I was like, dude, I work for you.
Yeah, I'm not feeling generous right now.
Like, what? And he's like, that's for that gentleman down there. And I was like, all right, cool.
Yeah,
Woo!
yeah. And the funny part is that I can, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but I can remember back when the first one of those shows I worked back in, I want to say it was either 2000 or 2001. It was right when we moved to Ocala.
Yep.
It was maybe 16 to 20 people. So it was half, if not less. And basically all we did was we walked into Harry's on the corner and we just waited for a table to open up, and that was it.
Yep.
So, and it became can I invite my friend? And then the magazine company invited more people, and it was the same thing as what you mentioned. I think Rick just kind of played along with it because it was kind of
it was so much fun.
Okay,
It was a good time.
It's a great time before we have to wake up and be at a place at 6 a.m. in the morning to park cars.
Yeah. Well, okay, so that show, it was such a success.
Yep.
And that show, what was the largest draw that we ever had at that show? Do you remember the number?
I want to say the number was about 1,122 cars, for whatever sticks in my head. I know it was north of 1,100, but that was also back before the park changed from being an entertainment complex back to being well. Keep in mind, not to pick on the terminology, but it was always state owned.
Yeah.
There was a lease in place.
Yep.
The difference is that when the state took it back over, when Silver Springs was an entertainment company, when they had the petting zoo and all the other stuff that was there, then they say, okay, well, we're going to reevaluate. We're going to pull some of this land back, and this is now you can't park cars over here.
Yep.
And then we're going to pull some of this land back, and you can't park cars over here either. And it's like, okay, well, wait a second. So now you have no attractions for people other than what we're bringing you, because the built-in deal that always made that show a success was, in addition to the least number of cars I ever saw there, like the last year we did it was 800-ish.
Yep.
You've got that many cars, so a car guy has no problem walking around an 800 car show for a day. That's fine. I would have done that. But to get your significant other or family out there, you had the glass bottom boats, the petting zoo, all these other things that they had going on. Well, as soon as you yank that away, then what's the attraction? That's gone. Well, their answer to that was, oh, well, they can get in for $2 a person now. And it's like, okay, that's great. And I agree with you that is a selling point, but not to the extent of all the handcuffs you're putting on us.
Right.
Because now we have to basically provide everything. And as Kirk remembers, we had bands that we had to hire to come out there. We had all these more things that we had to keep adding. And just like the dinners, it got further and further away from its original intent. The original intent of the show, when Rick took it over from the Mustang Club that did it for 2 years before he got it, was it's a customer appreciation deal. And I don't want to go off on the tangent too hard, but it got so far away from that idea that the minute he tried to even pull on the rope to bring it back to where it was okay, maybe this isn't such a good idea anymore.
Well, and it was one of those things where Silver Springs at the time it was their biggest draw every year.
Right.
They made more money off that day than they did any other time throughout the year. So it was such a good pull for them. And we had wrote in our verbiage for the show, you can't bring drinks, you can't bring food. But we weren't checking cars, right. So it was like everybody would just bring a cooler. All right, let's grab a beer real quick and shut it. It was fine. Nobody cared. Yeah. And it was just a good time. It really was like a family reunion every year.
It was. There were a lot of people that looked forward to doing it.
Yeah. It was a good show. And then that spawned into the GM show, which was really successful as well. And that was in October. And then we had that Mustang show in January.
Yep.
And we had snow one year.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. We had a guy literally collect the snow off everybody's car on, that was Sunday.
No, it was on Saturday, actually.
Was it?
Yes.
So that was, because I thought he collected it off all the cars that sat overnight.
So what ended up happening, because I didn't want to step on your story there.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was I was always kind of like the point guy. I would show up at 6 a.m. So I remember I bought my Canon camera, my first one, like not long before that, and I'm driving a black Excursion out to this deal. So, of course, it's pitch black. You're in the middle of a parking lot with no light, and you're waiting on all these cars to come in. Well, the problem is that I have no way of shooting anything that's going to prove there's snow on everything. So I just sat there and just left my lens cap open, and it eventually caught it. But there were always probably a half a dozen people that would show up early. Rick knew them. They did the cruise over to Cedar Key the day before. Yep. So what ended up happening was it was two guys from a Mustang club always came out early on Friday. And they parked their cars and they put car covers on them because they're both convertibles. Yep. So what happened was the snow collected on collected on the car covers. So they took what was on those two car covers and they built a snowman probably about this high. And they stuck it in front of the car. And I remember because it was one of 2 years that we had Steve Saleen out there to sign autographs.
Yep, I do remember
the snowman never melted. It sat there for 2 days because the high never got out of the low 40s. Wow. So it never really got hot enough to really melt it.
Yep.
Well, I shot at the time like 5 or 6 photos because Kirk and I were in the same way. We were always constantly running everywhere.
Yep.
The only reason I think he got photos was because he was tasked with it, and I got basically whatever blank needed to happen. So I remember one photo that I shot in specific was Rick's Boss 429. It's 69 black car, Raven black. Obviously very highly sought after car, and he drove the wheels off that thing, and people were absolutely astonished by the fact that not only would somebody drive it, but they would leave it uncovered overnight sitting outside. Right. So I show up in the morning and this thing has snow this high on his windshield wipers. So I cock the camera a little bit to the side. I get a shot of where you can see the big hood scoop that's Boss 429 only, the Boss 429 emblem on the decal on the side, and then the snow stacked on the windshield wipers. And it got shared a lot.
Yeah, everybody would have been like, oh my God, you did what?
Yeah, when Tom Shaw used to be around, and he was the editor of the now defunct Mustang magazine, he actually asked me, can I use it as my rear cover photo? And he told me the next year, he says, you will not believe the number of people that thought that was photoshopped or what have you.
Of course.
And because so many people just couldn't believe that somebody would use a car for that. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it's car values always change, but realistically speaking, that's a $200,000 to $250,000 car in most markets.
Shit, today?
Or it's probably worth more than that now. Today, but that's why I said I'm speaking in relative terms. Right, so, but yeah,
at that time.
At the time,
sure.
it was an easy $200,000 car.
Right, and that was all the money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, I had so many good memories of that show, and it was always, all right, what cars are Rick taking to the show this year?
Correct.
Because he would drive them to the show. Now, the distance between NPD and Silver Springs is 10 miles, maybe?
Yeah, I'd say 8 to 10 miles, yeah.
About 10 miles. So it wasn't like you're going cross country, right. But it was like, oh, shit, man, I get to drive something cool through town. And some of my best moments was driving the KR, the Shelby KR 500.
Yes.
That was cool.
Especially with the family history for the Schmidt family, yeah.
Yeah. So I was driving that car back, and Rick was following me in the Boss. And I'm watching him, and every once in a while I see headlights dipping. I'm like, all right, the dude's playing, right?
Yeah.
is it cool to play?
Yeah.
And I just feathered the throttle in the Shelby, and that thing. Now, granted, it's in stock form,
Right.
But,
so it has polyglass tires, which are going to break loose if you look at them the wrong way.
right. But as somebody that works for your boss, I laid in the throttle just a bit, and that car completely I'm going down 40, and it's spinning, and it's just like, oh shit! And I brought it back around and did one of those things, and I'm like, that was a really dumb move. I shouldn't have done that. That was really, really dumb. So we get back to the shop, and I'm like, is everything cool? And Rick's looking at me like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I broke the Shelby loose. He's like, yeah, I don't give a shit. Like, it's totally cool, man. He goes, these things are made to be driven. I'm like, all right, cool. We're in the same we're in the same boat then.
Yeah. Now, ironically enough, I'm going to go off script here a little bit. One of the things I remember about the first GM show, and I forget what year it was. I know we did it for 10 years, so I want to say it might have been 2006 or 2007, I think sounds like about the right time. So in NPD's 220-ish car and truck collection, one of the cars there's stuff that's in there that is irreplaceable. It's one of one, okay? As cool as Rick's Boss 429 is, you could smash that car and find another one. Okay, I mean, I don't mean crush it. I just it's replaceable. However, one of the 6 or 7 cars that they took to the first GM show was the 50 millionth 1963 Chevy Impala.
Yep.
They only made one 50 millionth car. There isn't another one. So, and I remember Rick and I were talking about it because what we would always do is they would go to Cedar Key. Everybody would get back between like 2 to 4 o'clock. And then as Kirk mentioned, normally what would happen is you would have all the vendors, and then Rick would throw keys at these people, like, because they were a small number of people that he trusted that always came to our shows. And that became kind of like hey, check out, I get to drive this, I get to drive that. And then there would usually be 1 to 3 NPD employees that would also need to take something. I always drove the van just because I didn't want parts and display product going flying.
Oh, I was a little bitch. I was there all the time going, come on, man, give me the keys. Come on.
Yep. So the only car that we didn't take out to the first show on Friday was the Impala.
Yeah.
So Rick and I are there at 6:30 in the morning. We're waiting for the sun to come up so we can start parking cars because we can't park them on a dark show field. We can't put them where we need to. So he and I are making small talk. And I said, so the Impala's coming out, right? And he goes, yeah. He goes, my dad's got the truck there and the trailer. It's all hooked up. All he has to do is go to NPD, load it in the trailer, take it out here. We'll put it in place. As long as he gets here by 10 o'clock, because they have insurance regulations, we'll be good. Jim drives the car
I remember.
From NPD to Silver Springs. Now, again, it's not the distance, but it's you're driving this through downtown Ocala. If somebody's gawking at you and they don't hit the brakes, then now you're dealing with an irreplaceable piece of GM history.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, it looked like a struggle between, like, the devil and the angel when Rick saw him pull up and he goes, where's the truck and trailer? And he goes, I left it back at NPD and I just drove it out here. And it was like what? So, and it was okay, it's cool, he drove it. But then there's the other side of it. It has 200 original miles, and what happens if somebody plowed into the side of it, that kind of thing. Damn. So real quick, the other thing about that car is, again, it had just under 200 miles when they picked it up. Mm-hmm. It was unrestored, and then they decided after owning it for, I want to say, close to a decade, they said, okay, a gold anniversary car like this really needs to be redone. So they repainted it, and they put a new aluminized exhaust on it. Everything else on that car, all of it, the trim, the emblems, all of it is what it left the factory with in 1963. Yep. Wow, so again, think about this for just a minute before you go, what happens if something happens to that car? Yep. That is irreplaceable. Yep.
So, well, one of the Ford magazines needed some coverage on the Galaxy that had, 5 miles on it?
You talking about the green one, or are you talking about one of the? You're talking about the black one. Yes.
Yeah, the black one.
So a 390 powered Galaxy 500. I want to say it was a 64 or a 65, and it was a 4-speed car too, also with red interior. Yeah. And it was one of 5 cars that Rick bought from a defunct Ford dealership. The guy every year would take a car or 2 and stick them in a basement, basically. Yep. They were never titled. They were all still in MSO. Wow. So when he so the rumor that I remembered hearing, I don't think I ever asked Rick directly about this, was by the time he got to the collection, the Mustangs were gone from it, but what was left was what was it? He had the 64 and 65 Galaxy 500.
Yep.
The 68 green Torino, the one that has 20 miles on it. The green springtime edition 1970 F100. And then there was another car that for whatever reason I'm drawing a blank on. I can't remember which one it is. So, but anyway, but all of them had window stickers still in them and less than 20 or less miles on the clock. And they were never titled either.
Wow.
So again, it was one of those things where it's like, this is a great piece of nostalgia to be able to look back and go, okay, sorry to say it, this is how crappy paint was back in the 60s.
Oh, God,
you
yeah.
look at it, because two of them are black cars, and you look at them and go, somebody really needs to take a buffing wheel to this. So,
Well, what was funny with that car was Rick called me to his office, and he's like, "Hey, I think it was Legendary Ford magazine at the time."
right.
And it was like, "Hey, they need this car shot." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, and he's handed me the keys. He's like, "Oh, you can photograph it, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Where do you want me to photograph it?" And he's like, "I don't know. Just don't go far with it." You know, it's literally got
Right.
5 miles on the odometer. Like, got it. All right, because we
Don't
used
break
to,
6.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Luckily, NPD still had a decent amount of space then. We didn't have a lot of trailers parked around there at that time, but it was before they did the expansion. But you could
Well,
still
I,
use.
I drove that one around the block. Remember where we used to shoot cars behind
Yes.
there? So
Yeah,
I
before-
mean,
before all the
I might
development
have put a
happened
half a
behind.
mile on that car.
Yeah, yeah. The cool thing is that before they built all the stuff behind where NPD
I
is
know.
now, the glass company more than
Yep.
anything,
Oh, they
there was
expanded huge.
a street with a circle at the end of it that had nothing that would pick up reflection. So I remember you shot several cars out there. As a matter of fact, there were a couple of cars that Hot Rod even shot out there during shows.
Yeah. There's a story behind where we shot a car out there, and I remember bringing the images into Photoshop and going, retouching it, going, "Oh, God, is that a rubber on the ground?" So that was how exclusive that location was.
Yeah.
Whoops.
We tackled a lot of cool stuff in the NPD. You're writing for the magazines. How do you transition into SICK the magazine?
So at that point, I had been working for Gainesville Raceway in a part-time capacity as an announcer. So I don't think I ever fully addressed this. So this is part of the
Yep.
whole equation. So at the time, like I said, I had not only been writing for Fastest Streetcar, but I'm also working usually 1 to 3 events a year for the NMCA more than anything else. So I'd done everything from working tech, or the staging lanes, doing stuff in the water box, etc. The only thing I never did was I never announced, because again, there's plenty of people that are established out there. Well, the guy who is one half of Fox's NHRA coverage, Brian Loans, who a lot of people know, at the time, he's working part-time for the NHRA. I think he's doing 10 events a year. And he's also announcing for the NMCA and the NMRA series, because they're sister series. And the event director comes and gets me from tech. We're slow. There's nobody coming through there. And he says, "Hey," he goes, "I know how much you like this True Street class," which ironically plays into the whole drag and drive thing to an extent. And he says, "I want to take you up to the tower, and I want to let you talk with Brian." And I'm like, "Okay, great. This is awesome. I get to sit here and talk with a guy who's done this." So I end up announcing in the tower with Brian for like 2.5 hours. And Brian hardly says a thing, but I know about everything because I'm writing this class all year, so I
Right.
know who the players are, I know how it works. So he decides to kind of take it as I'll save my voice and kind of kick back. Fast forward 4 years, and Gainesville says, "Hey, we need an announcer." Nah, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to stop racing. So I just don't say anything. 3 months go by, and they can't find anybody. And I'm like, okay, I feel really bad. Let's see what the deal is. So I contact the track manager at the time, Mike Urick, who is now retired, and he says, "Well, we don't need somebody full-time." He said, "So you can continue to race." He goes, "We just need somebody to do test and tunes." Okay, that's cool. So I sign on to do test and tunes in 2020. Fast forward 1 year, and now the NMRA has given me a chance to do their season-ending event at Bowling Green. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I'm going into it with somebody else. They're not just going to hand the keys to somebody who's never done a national event before, at where you're crowning your season champions with no catch net. but they did. So I'm like, okay. So I don't know if that is what spiraled the whole sick thing, because what happened after that, so I go and do that in October of 2021. Brian Loans contacts me in January of 2022, and he says, hey, Tom Bailey, the guy who owns Sick the Magazine, who also owns the 6 Seconds 69 Camaros, which is where the name comes from. He says, hey, I can't get out of this NHRA thing that I have to do. He's contractually obligated to do it. I would like to tell Tom that you will do it. Doesn't give me any additional information to that. So I don't know what the deal is. The only thing I've done with drag and drives is watch Hot Rod Drag Week on YouTube for probably the last 5-6 years. So I'm excited but nervous. I'm like, okay, cool. So Tom calls me 5 minutes later. It was a very awkward conversation. I've never talked to the guy before, never met him, so the conversation is very dry, very short. I don't know where we're going with it.
Right.
I don't know if he's interviewing me. I don't know if Brian's told him he just needs to hire me and Tom's running me through the ringer at first. I don't know what the deal is. So finally, Tom says, and he's not an AH, he's just blunt, is how I would put it. He says, Derek, listen, I'm going to be frank with you. He goes, I don't know who you are and I've never heard you announce before, but if Brian Loans tells me to hire you, I'm hiring you. Okay, cool. So I hang up the phone. I'm in a daze. I'm sitting here excited and giddy that I get to do this. And then reality sets in about 2 minutes later of, if I screw this up, Brian is never going to recommend me for another job again, and I will never work in this industry again. So fast forward about 5 weeks, I go to sick week. Don't really know what's going on, don't know who I'm doing it with, what have you. I go into the booth and I meet Adam Dory and Chad Reynolds. Adam Dory has done Rocky Mountain Race Week as their main announcer for, I want to say, about 5-6 years now. Same thing as me, an enthusiast. He's got a stick shift G-Body Malibu. He's very in touch with knowing stuff about the contestants like this. Chad Reynolds, who runs Bank Shift with Brian Loans, was around when, to throw some history at you, when Larry Larson cracked off the first 6-second pass in drag and drive history. He was there announcing it at Columbus. So I'm like, okay, so I'm the new guy going into this meeting with these two guys that are very well established. Where am I going to fit in here? So it worked out great. We had a great week. And then I don't hear anything. So I'm like, okay, I guess it was a one and done deal. I totally understand. They're going to hire Brian next year because he's done Hot Rod Drag Week for all these years, and I'm fine with that. You know, I mean, it sucks a little bit, but I'm thankful to have had the opportunity. So October, November comes around. Tom hits me up and says, hey, I would like you to announce Sick Week again. And I said, okay, cool. From the first conversation, then 2 weeks later, he calls me again and he says, so I'm going to do 2 more events next year. I want you to do both of those too. I said, I'm sorry, I can't do that. He says, well, why not? I don't understand. I said, I only get 3 weeks of vacation. I'm married and I have a kid. That would tap my vacation time out. I'm not going to do that. I want to stay married, and I won't be able to get unpaid time off.
Yep, right.
So another couple weeks after that, he calls me up after some back and forth messaging and basically states, I've always put the cart before the horse, and it doesn't work out for a lot of people, but it works out for me. So here's what I'm going to propose. What if I just hire you, and then that way you can announce anything I need you to, and you don't have to worry about trying to do announcing plus something else? Because at one point he even suggested freelance writing. And that was what led to the other half of what I currently do, which is web editor. So I sent him a couple of the articles I had written recently for Fastest Streetcar, because at the time, I think they had 4 employees that were working for him. That was it. So you have one guy who is putting together a magazine every 3 months by himself. Granted, there's contributing editors and stuff, but there's nobody else helping him with this. The bulk of that responsibility is on his shoulders. So, of course, he has no time to put stuff out on the web every day. So Tom was looking to fill that role, and I think that once he knew I could write, that it became the easy decision to, instead of hiring an announcer when I need them 4 or 5 times a year, I'll just hire somebody, put them on my payroll, and you'll be able to write stories for me the rest of the time. So as hard as it was for me, similar to what you and I have talked about when you left NPD, I never thought I would work in cars or racing or anything regarding it for a living. I thought it was going to be a hobby. So to walk away from a place that I worked for a little over 24 years at that time, I had been there since I was in college. It was really tough, but at the same time, I said, you know what? If I'm ever going to try and announce any more in the future, this is going to give me the best chance to do so. So that was part of the decision. Not only that, instead of commuting 80 miles every single day to go to work, I get to work from home. So I get to take my kid to school every day, pick him up. Those are the kind of things you can't replace. So it was one of those trade-off deals where my wife and I sat down and talked about it, and she said, you're going to be gone for probably 20-ish weekends a year, which is a lot when you sit there and you look at it just in a bubble. But when you pull yourself back and say, I'm not going to also be gone from 7 a.m. every weekday morning until 6:30 at night every weekend night, okay, now that starts to make sense.
And Tom's car was kind of a signature car. I know if you don't visually see it in your mind right now, as soon as I explain it to you, you'll be like, oh, I remember that car. When all the drag and drive events started to become popular, his was the gold 69 Camaro with the black stripes, and he towed a trailer where he put the two slicks mounted on the face of the trailer. You remember that car? It was like on the cover of every cool performance magazine. It was like, because what was he running then? It was because that was a twin turbo car, right?
Correct, but not originally. So the deal with that car was, it was built by a guy named Denny Terzic. It was his second pro-charged car that he put together. And ironically, the only year that he owned it and competed with it, it was driven by Jeff Lutz. So Denny Terzic puts together this black, I want to say 67, 68 Camaro. It wasn't a 69, I know that. It was a pro-charged car. It ran 770s, 780s back in, I want to say, 2011, 2010 maybe. So at the time, pretty fast. So, but then they build this new car. So this is when, okay, we're going to really show you what unlimited means, which means there are no rules. As long as it passes state guidelines and you have a VIN number or some kind of registration number, insurance, and a license, and it has lights, turn signals, a horn, what have you, you're clear to run it. It doesn't matter if it's all fiberglass. It doesn't matter if it's stretched, because unlimited means unlimited. So Danny Terzic races it with Jeff Lutz driving it for 1 year. Then Tom Bailey buys it. The first year he races it, he doesn't finish the event with it. In 2013, he races it with twin turbos on it. So they had made the change. I don't know if they did it the year before or he did it that year. So he won his first drag and drive that he competed with, which ironically, in 2013, there was still only one drag and drive event per year. Hot Rod Drag Week was the only one still at that point. Fast forward to 2023, Tom takes that car kind of out of mothballs because he hadn't done anything really with it except for, I think he did Roadkill Nights with it a couple of times, and takes it back on Hot Rod Drag Week and wins on the 10th anniversary of the car winning the first time. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Very.
No, it was one of those things. I remember everybody grabbing magazines and going, dude, this car is badass. So, you know what I mean? It was one of those things.
The photo that you're referring to paint the picture was a lot of, and I get into these debates because I don't like arguing on the internet. What I say is it may not fit your definition of a street car, but it has proven it is a street car. I personally prefer a small tire, stock body, stock suspension style car. That's what I grew up around. Doesn't mean I don't have appreciation for other stuff, but people seem to have this problem with prioritizing, oh, it's not a real street car. It's okay. Just because it's lighter than your car, makes more power than your car, has big tires on it, whatever. If it can show that it can race 5 different tracks or 5 different times during a week at 4 different tracks and drive 1,000 miles with no support system, then I'm sorry, it's a street car. It's proven the fact it is. And the photo that made Tom's car really get the attention it does is it was on the cover of Hot Rod Magazine with no hood on it, like you said, the tires, the slicks mounted on the front of it, and it's being driven in like a pouring rainstorm. And he's just driving it down the road. Now, granted, was it the most comfortable thing? I'm sure it wasn't, but it doesn't matter because he proved that you could do it. And there have been people that have come and gone since him, but those are the kind of cars that, like you said, kind of like Larry Larson's car. He won 5 years in a row with an all-steel 3,500-pound Lenko, ironically, 67 or 66
cool.
Chevy 2 Nova.
Yep.
So, but things get faster, and that's why you have pro mod cars. Like Jeff Lutz just brought his car back after, 7-8 years away?
Yeah.
Hadn't been raced.
No, it's just cool looking back at history, and you kind of see like people that really set the bar. And Tom did that. When it came to the drag and drive event stuff, it was like that guy set the bar for what everybody else was striving to try to meet. You know what I mean? It was just really cool. And obviously that's what opened the doors for him to pursue the magazine, pursue the new events and everything else. So Tom has Sick Week, and there's also Sick Summer. What other events does he have? I know those are his two big ones.
Right. So those are what we would say those are the established events, meaning they take place in the same area of the country every year. Now, granted, Sick Summer is only happening for the second time, but Sick
Illinois?
Week, Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin. So we're using the same tracks we used last year, which is Byron Dragway, Tri-State Raceway, Great Lakes Dragway, and which is the one I'm forgetting? Cordova Dragway. But what Tom does, just like he does with Sick Week, is he changes the order of them. And what that allows is you're going to run a different route. It's going to be on a different day. It keeps it new and exciting. It's not the same old thing. However, it now becomes a destination to where you can say, I'm going to plan for this because I know it's going to be in the same relative location. So those two are the established events. Now, the other established event that Tom has that isn't a drag and drive, but it can play into that crowd, is what was originally called Sick Nights. It's now called Sick Power Fest. So that whole thing started as a get-together at M1 Concourse, which is just outside of Pontiac, Michigan, and ironically also about less than, I want to say, 3 or 4 miles away from where they had Roadkill Nights last year, excuse me. So that's a deal that Tom originally put together to donate to charity. It became so popular with people wanting to get into it that this will be the third year this year that he's opening it up to do it. So last year it went from being a car show and a burnout contest to last year we had drifting, burnout, we had nitro flamethrowers, we had RC drag racing all day, all these different things that were all part of it. Unfortunately, it ended up getting shut down prematurely by a tornado warning.
Oh, damn.
Oh, God.
Yeah, first time I can honestly say I've ever heard a tornado siren, so that was kind of freaky.
Oh, wow.
When you're in the middle of nowhere and everything's a glass building and you're going, okay, this isn't going to work out too well. So, but anyway, so there's those three events that, again, are established. What I referred to earlier about being on a Arizona road with no power poles or anything like that, that was Death Week. So what Tom has decided to also add into the mix is we're going to do a one-off every year, meaning it is going to be an event where we will not duplicate it. So last year, Tom decided to do a drag and drive, which had only been attempted, to my knowledge, 3 times up until that point out on the West Coast. And he called it Death Week, meaning we're going across Death Valley, not people are going to die. So, like, for example, and the funny part is that it's on my, it's actually on my canteen because of the fact that, ironically, of course, not really that strange, people didn't want to support something called Death Week.
Right.
Good luck getting sponsors. You want me to sponsor what? So we actually made a sticker where we used kind of like what was used on the National Lampoon's Vacation, called Death Family Fun Week. So
that's cool.
So, but it ended up being a really cool deal because it was 2,000 miles over 9 days, and we went to 3 different racetracks.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah. So, but
what charity is that supporting then?
Tom's deal that he does in Michigan, honestly, unfortunately, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
So, but the deal with Death Week was, I think a lot of people looked at it and went, maybe I do it, maybe I won't. It's going to be really tough on cars. So Tom kind of opened that one up where, as a general rule, drag and drives don't really allow rental cars, but there were people that were driving regular stuff. Now, to be fair though, we only gave, to make it where it wasn't about winning an award, it was about doing the journey and making the memories. So Tom only gave away 1 orange Sick helmet, which is what we give class winners.
Okay.
The guy that actually won it has a mid 5-second stock suspension 79 Malibu from New York. His name's Jason Russo. So he towed his car all the way out to Arizona from New York and then did 2,000 miles through varying, like when we started, it was 110 degrees at Firebird Raceway. We got up into the Sequoia National Forest where it was in the 40s.
Jesus.
So we changed that much. We go through 6,000 feet of elevation changes.
That's cool.
And that guy just kept running mid-5s in the 8th mile on a little 275 tire.
That's cool.
So this year, what Tom is doing is called 666, where we're going to pick Route 66 up in St. Louis and run it all the way over to the West Coast for 8 days.
No way, really?
So it's going to be 6 different racetracks.
Okay.
What is that?
And 50 different attractions that we're going to stop at.
That's cool.
Yep. So, but that's the one and done. What I always use to explain you made a really good pass, you're going to turn it in and get on the road, not sit at a racetrack all day. And that's a whole nother avenue we can go down. But the point is, Tom, I think, started the magazine, in my opinion, is doing these events because it's not just about the winning. It's about the memories and the family and the friends that you make from it. And that's the thing that the drag and drive community has really opened my eyes to is you will have people that will come out there that don't know anyone versus the bracket racing stuff that I was raised around where everybody kind of knows everybody. You do have cliques, but everybody kind of knows everybody. I know somebody who never competed on a drag and drive before. They were new people. They had never been to one. They went out there, they get to day 4, they're almost done, and their fuel pump roaches. So they're on the side of the road with no fuel pump. And this is a mid 8-second Mustang. So it's not going to take just anything. It needs to take something that's going to get it there. So I start, as soon as they post it, I'm calling around, trying to find something. They end up getting what in monetary equivalent is almost a $1,500 electric fuel pump from a guy they've never met before.
Yep.
The guy literally pulls up behind him on the road and says, hey, what do you need? He goes, oh, I need a fuel pump. Okay, I've got one sitting here. It's a brand new one. Pulls it out of the box, hands it to him and says, let's plug it in, see if it'll work. They plug it in, get it working, cars fires up, they're good. He said, okay, what do you want me to do? You want me to get it to the next racetrack and then I'll figure out some kind of alternative and I'll give you your fuel pump back? No, leave it on the car. When you finish, you can tell me if you want to buy it or you can give it back to me and I'll stick it in my spares. Show me somewhere else that something like that happens.
Right.
No, it's there's tons of stories though that just proves like car people are just good people, man.
That's what I was going to say. That's the car culture.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to make it seem like drag and drive is the only place that does it because you could see that happen in professional drag racing too. I mean, there is a mentality of get everybody to the starting line or get everybody to the finish line. Whether it's somebody you have to line up next to that you want to give your last spare to, but they could beat you with that part that you just lent them. But that mentality, in my opinion, is part of the reason why the car culture is very easy to get involved with and very easy to also get behind too, even if somebody you haven't met. So
so a couple weeks ago when you had
sick week,
yes, I was driving back from Atlanta because I was up doing a thing for my work. And as I was driving back, that was on Thursday. So it was.
So we were up at South Georgia Motorsports Park in Cecil.
Yep. And everybody was driving from there back to Orlando to Speed World. And I'm just seeing everybody at rest stops and on the interstate. And I'm passing cool cars. And the guys that did the Tesla minivan.
Boosted Boys.
Boosted Boys, past them. You know, going down the interstate and a whole bunch of other just really cool cars. And it was one of those things, like, as I was driving, I was like, I'm doing that next year. Like, absolutely. Because there's so many cool, I mean, you guys have so many classes. You could take a street car if you wanted. You could take a rented car if you wanted and race it. And then if you got damn near pro mods out there as well that are running. It's just such a cool event that anything kind of goes.
Well, the other thing that Tom does, he's not the first guy to do it, but he also has sick wards. So, like, if, for example, if you want to park up front, if you want to bring something cool, if you want to be part of the track to track and through the checkpoints and all the stuff, you could sign up for sick ward. And what that allows you to do is do everything but the racing. And it costs a lot less. So if you don't want the stress of having to race your vehicle every single day, you can do that too. And it's a fraction of the cost. And we've actually had people
participate for the awesomeness of it.
Correct. And we've actually had people that have decided, I don't know if I want to do 900 miles. I don't know if my car is going to handle it. Okay, I'm going to do sick ward first. So that way, in case something happens, you don't have a trailer attached. You don't have all this other stuff. You're not worried about getting there at 6 a.m. to change everything and make your time run and what have you. So I think that's part of why that part of it is also impressive. And we get dozens of people that do sick ward because, again, they want to be part of it. They want to do the experience, but it's not the same as let's dive in with both feet and, okay, now not only do I have to worry about surviving hundreds of miles on the road, I also need to make runs on the racetrack, and that can work into your psyche of, okay, well, do I stay and make 3 runs? Do I stay and make 4 runs? Well, every time I make a hit, is your car going to survive the road? Because a lot of people forget that. It's very easy to go to a racetrack and say, okay, I'm going to just keep plugging away until I get the number I want. Okay, but now that also means the later you've stayed, the later you're leaving. Yep. And the later you're going to get to your hotel and the less sleep you're going to get. And that just keeps compiling as you go through. And I've seen lots of people where this is why you have a co-driver, or this is why you go with teams, because someone could be, hey, you're tired. You need to make sure you turn this on, otherwise you're going to fry your motor, something like that. Right.
So an outsider looking in with Tom Bailey, the cover of Hot Rod, having his 69 Camaro on there, right? That kind of set the stage of cool factor. Mm-hmm. And then fast forward, the very first 1320 video of Cletus, right?
Same car,
right? Using, the YouTube channel with Cletus McFarland, that character was made off of that car.
All right.
Like Garrett got in front of that car and was just doing a goof and like, I'm Cletus McFarland and this is my America car and America this, right? And then it got 1 million views overnight. So again, that car being a staple of that. And it seems like, Garrett, Cletus, has a loyalty to Tom because his success is literally based off of that car, to, him getting started on his own YouTube channel and 1320 and everything else. And now when you watch Sick Week, like the YouTube, what do you call it? YouTubers, right? The draw that they're bringing is huge. So Cletus and all his team are racing. Mm-hmm. You got Derek from
Vice Grip Garage.
Yep. Who else? Some other YouTubers like.
So we talked about the Boosted Boy. We talked about the Boosted Boys and PFI Speed. So they came down from. Brett and Jamie came down from Colorado. The last 2 years, they've brought their own car. This year, they brought a GTR that they had worked on for, who was it, Trevor and Aaron Brannon. Mm-hmm. And they were trying to get the car in the 7s. It didn't happen, but anyway. So, there's people that get involved in it. And I think that part of that is, again, because it's in January, February, and you really don't have anything against it at that point. The NHRA season hasn't started. A lot of racetracks are still closed where a lot of these people are from. So it almost becomes, for lack of a better way to say it, it almost becomes like a big party. Even though
nobody else can race at that time of year, but we're still going in Florida.
South Georgia. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Florida.
Yep. Hallelujah.
Yep. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't think that Tom ever created that whole idea. Based on the talks I've had with him, I don't think Sick Week ever came about because of that. I think that was merely a result of being an enthusiast and saying, okay, I've gone out and run other drag and drives. Yeah. What would you, because again, there's people that look at things with their wallet or from an organizational standpoint. Yeah. And then there's people that are going to look at it from an enthusiast standpoint. Yep. Chances are there's going to be short-sightedness on both sides because enthusiasts are going to think about stuff, and then unfortunately the money is nowhere near the top aspect. Yeah. And if you want it to be successful, it has to make a profit, obviously, or you just have to start with a pile of money.
The problem with our industry is the people that understand the cool factor versus the corporate companies that get involved and they're more focused on the ratio of making earnings. Mm-hmm. Tom understands the cool factor.
Correct.
Right? Like what would make this event cool? Right. And he implements it. Anybody else that's on the corporate side of that would look at that event and go, wait a second, how the hell are we going to make money off of this? Right. This doesn't make any damn sense.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So it's awesome to see that Tom has put all his chips on a bet that it's like, I don't know, man, it may not make it, but he he made that bet, and it's cool to see that it's been successful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really into racing and that whole scene, but what I'm hearing you explain sounds like a possible new way of it working. You know, like as far as everybody being involved.
Correct.
Yep.
And that's the thing that I think the great thing, in my opinion, about a lot of the drag and drive stuff is again, without dating myself, but doing so, it takes you back to when things were simpler.
Yeah.
And yes, don't get me wrong that there are a lot of things that are better because we have technologies and conveniences and so forth, but there's something to be said about I'm going on a vacation with car friends to make new friends and make memories, and there's no purse tied to this. There's nothing that I'm worried about winning. It's merely about having the fun, and the adventure, and all of that goes along with it, not just about the trophy. Right. And in today's driven world of you have to win and you have to do this and you have to do that, it's a refreshing pullback. That's why, for me, announcing it and an enthusiast, I can get behind people that are going out there with, for example, a 15-second PT cruiser that are honestly having just as much fun being out there as somebody that runs in the 7s or the 8s.
Yep.
You know, did they put in the same kind of wear miles and what have you as the faster cars? No, but it makes sense to them. And that's the great thing about a drag and drive is there's literally a seat for everybody.
Yep.
So.
No, but I will say, like, Holly Power Tour, super cool. Like, I people are totally into
That's
it.
what
And
it's
I think
called
it's
now,
cool.
Holly Power Tour?
Isn't that what it is?
You're talking about the Hot Rod Power Tour?
Hot Rod Power Tour.
Okay, I was going to say, geez, they bought that too?
I think they did.
Probably did.
So Hot Rod Power Tour.
Yeah.
Let me correct myself. So it's cool, you know, and tons of people do it. But the Sick Week stuff, like, I think the fact that there's a face behind it, right? Like the Hot Rod Power Tour, it's super corporate kind of feel, and it, you know, it's a cool event and people are all getting together and having a good time. But the fact that Tom is kind of the face of Sick Week, just, I think people are more drawn to that, you know what I mean? Just like, not putting him in a super, like a stardom element,
It's
but
personalized.
Yeah, right.
Which
like
the whole car culture is
about
personalized.
that. Right.
Yeah, no, that's
that guy put everything on the line, and everything that he's put his signature on has been badass to this point. So why would we think anything else? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and ironically, I brought it, but it's not out here. But that plays into the whole thing that started, also played into the whole Sick Week, Sick Summer deal, which is Sick the Magazine. It took what had been used for decades in the magazine industry and basically threw it in the trash. Let's put something out there where it focuses on what the readers want. It's not ads. It's not you need to buy the speed part. It's let's talk about the people. Let's talk about the results. Let's put as many photos in this thing as we can. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't matter if you're running something that's, you know, blazingly fast or whatever.
Feature on these guys, they brought out a PT Cruiser.
Correct. And the reason that I bring that up is because they were the most vocal people at the awards ceremony last year, and it was funny, borderline, a little bit annoying, just because they kept doing it. But at the same time, at the end of the night, I'm sitting there going, they just finished 900 miles and made 5 different, you know, track visits. That's something you should celebrate. Why not? I mean, it's, as Thomas called it, it is the Super Bowl of drag and drive racing, because we run it at the best time of the year for the air, meaning it's going to have the best oxygen quantity, so cars are going to run fast. We make sure that every racetrack is prepped to the teeth, meaning you're going to be able to throw whatever you want at it and it's going to hook. A lot of these other racetracks, not saying anybody in particular, but that's the kind of thing where the cost adds up. You know, do you want to throw $5,000 to $10,000 worth of prep and team at an event, you know, 4 times? Can you sustain that kind of, you know, money in there? So these are the kind of things that Tom looks at where, again, somebody that's an organizational based guy may not take that route. They're going to look for maximum profit. Well, this is also the reason that this year there's already over 30 different drag and drives. So you can go anywhere in the United States pretty much, and you're going to find something probably within a day of you. They are also in Canada, Australia, Sweden, for example.
Really?
So, but again, it's getting back to the roots of why we did this in the first place, which is if you have a car that's a race car, again, I have nothing against that. My dad has one. But I have always, since I got my driver's license. I've always been about something that can do both. And if you can't do both, then it becomes something you can only take it out at certain times or can only be used for certain things.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's not as useful as something that can do both.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I mean, timestamp this video here, and this is what I'm saying.
Right.
Is Florida, this area, like Central Florida, is like kind of the new cool car culture. Like, you know, you kind of look at like California was always that from the 50s moving forward, and all the car builders and everything else was coming out of California, and it was always the hot spot to be, right? But now you look at Florida and you just kind of watch like everything that's really taken off here. It feels like this is where the culture on the East Coast versus the West Coast is really getting established.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just kind of cool to see how that's kind of, it's awesome to see, since we've had such a long relationship working at NPD over 10 years together, to see you make the transition to somebody that I already think is highly respectable in this market, and you teaming with them and being partner with them. It's just super cool to see that kind of transition. I'm glad you got your feet grounded with him.
It's one of those things where, honestly, again, it's like what you and I talked about. There's making a living, and then there's getting to do what you really enjoy.
Right.
Now, granted, the biggest thing for
cheers.
me, yeah,
Sorry, just
yeah, I was gonna say it's watered, but it's still the same.
Yeah.
all good.
So I would say the biggest thing for me, again, is the fact that you and I have both been raised in an enthusiast-based society. So
Yeah.
that's something that's very easy to get behind.
Yep.
The other cool thing that with all my writing that I'm doing for Tom that's encouraging with all the stuff that's happening in Florida and rising land values, and unfortunately, last year, 2 racetracks that got closed.
Yeah.
This year, there's already talks of 2 racetracks getting built/opened.
Oh, really? What two tracks?
So
is that?
Leadfoot City, which has been, I actually
Oh,
just
yeah.
wrote about,
Yep,
I actually
in
just wrote about
Brooksville.
this week.
Yep.
So Leadfoot City, which has
They've
already been
struggling,
around,
right, with the whole build.
correct. So they already have a, for lack of a better way to call it, they have like a parking lot/skid pad, what have you.
Yep.
Well, they've gotten the approvals and the permits and everything to add an 1/8 mile drag strip, a motorcycle location, I believe, or a motorcycle track. They've named off all these things they can do with it, but it's really going to, I guess, depend on once they get it built and they figure out, okay, who says they want to run an event and is actually going to come with people and structure and what have you to do it. Even though there's much less Florida tracks, and I don't want to wax nostalgia, but yeah, I mean, at one point, Florida had, to my knowledge, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I want to say there were 8 or 9 operating tracks in the state. We're down to, I want to say, 5,
Right.
if I remember correctly. Yeah, I
sounds
think we're
right.
down to 5, yeah. Actually, well, nah, I take that back. We're down to 5 because we count the one that's, yeah. So again,
count that one.
I'm sitting here batting at my head. So anyway, so Leadfoot City is one. The other one is Callahan, which has a 5th mile dirt oval that is used for mostly go-kart racing, but they also run miniature sprints and stuff like that out there. Same thing, they're going to put an 1/8 mile track there. And the ironic thing is both of these places have basically said this is going to be an 1/8 mile of asphalt. And I think Callahan even said that theirs is going to require all cars to have mufflers and what have you, and they're even saying it's going to be for street cars.
Yeah.
So, again, it may not necessarily be what the drag racing community wants as a whole, but when you consider the fact that Jack's Raceways was closed down in 2004, and then Green Cove was closed down in 2017, the East Coast was probably happy to have at least something.
Yep.
And both of them are supposed to be done to somewhat entertain possibilities in 2024. So
But
that's
I mean,
encouraging.
You look at like what fills your YouTube feed, you know, of like
It's tracks
everything.
closing. It's what everybody talks about.
Yeah, but even like the environment that we have here in Florida and stuff, you know what I mean? I feel like it's ramping up. You know, like Bradenton completely just resurfaced their entire track. They just did all that in concrete, didn't they? Didn't they resurface
I don't think
that?
they did the whole thing in concrete. I think some of it is still asphalt. But yeah, they did that, I want to say, a year or 2 ago. Because ironically, I bought some of the 50-year-old surface in a jar when they were selling it.
Did they really?
Yeah, they did. So, no, it is, again, you talk about Cletus because
Right.
Victor Alvarez, who owns Bradenton Motorsports Park, who also owns Induction Performance,
Yep.
which is an import-based performance company, those two guys have both, they're both in their late 20s, or I want to say mid to late 20s for Cletus, and I want to say Victor may have just turned 30-ish because he got named to Drag Illustrated's 30 Under 30 a couple years ago. But when you look at, if either one of you have been to Bradenton in the last 2 years, no? Yes?
Never been.
No? Okay. So understand. So,
I have, but yeah.
Right. So so I'm going to try and paint you a picture. So from what you probably remember the last time that you were down there, because I know you were there in 2005 when I was there.
Yep.
As soon as you get off the interstate, you get off I-75. If you turn right and go west, you're going to hit the beach in probably 20 minutes at most. If you go east, you get maybe a mile or two into that road, and it turns to nothing.
Yep.
It is all farmland, and that's all it was. Now, I went over there 5 times last year. Every time I'm going over there, they are mowing and grading and digging up and changing more land to the point where it was on Cletus's channel, and ironically, I also wrote a story about this, and he did a video about this, updating people. There was an urban sprawl line where basically the commissioners said, on one hand, well, this is a racetrack that's been around for 50 years. We should preserve it and do what we can.
I saw this,
But meanwhile, we're going to go ahead and sign and say that 8,500 new homes can be built, including right up to where the frigging racetrack's shutdown area is.
Right.
And it's like when Top Fuelers were running there last weekend during the Pro Superstar Shootout, there's people posting in housing community groups and what have you, like, what's all this noise? Why are my windows shaking?
And the houses aren't even that
they're not even that
yet.
close. They're 5 to 6 miles away, and you can hear it, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, they're supposedly in agreement of noise allowed, and but how that'll work.
Well, thankfully enough, I don't want to get too far off topic, but I do want to address that real quick before we move on. So for Victor to buy something where he already knows, I hate to say it this way because I don't want to be, negative Nancy, but it's hard to ignore what's coming and say, I'm just going to keep sinking tons of money into this event and into this track and know that it's probably going to get bulldozed in 5 to 10 years. I'm not saying I have any knowledge that says it is.
Yep.
However, it's hard to ignore the facts. Garrett has put a video out, I want to say in the last 6 weeks, where he basically stated, as you just brought up, there is an addendum in every new house that's supposed to be sold where it basically states, you realize you are buying something within a certain amount of distance from these two properties, which have both been there way longer than your house has been there. And you cannot bring any kind of grievance on the fact that these make noise and they race. Now, what a lot of people don't know, I'm surprised by this, Bradenton already has a curfew and has had one for several years. But a lot of people don't understand that or knew about that. They just thought, oh, okay, well, it's so far out east away from town, it's fine. Well, Cletus also isn't stupid, and he realizes, as he stated, he goes, listen, the commissioners are on our side at this point where they know that it's important. However, 5 to 10 years, commissioners change and things can change.
Right.
And you could get a big enough group of people that decide that they want to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars to drag it through court. And at that point, Cletus has already said, if it comes to that point, I am willing to go out, buy a piece of land somewhere, build another racetrack, and have that place close to, if not operable, before we shut down the current one. Yep. And based on what he's, like you said, based on what he's done in his career, both YouTube and outside of it, I have no reason to doubt that wouldn't happen. And I'd be willing to make you a bet that Victor does the exact same thing, because if you look at all the money that they have spent upgrading that place, it is the exact same dedication to keeping the hobby going and keeping the sport going.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just saying, man, Florida's the new hotspot. Just saying.
Hey, listen, when other places
I'm
are closed for
selling on
4
it.
to 5 months, we're still racing. Down
That's
here.
exactly
No
it,
snow
man.
except for that one MPD show.
Yep.
But the show still went on anyway. There were that many people that decided to come out anyway.
All right, Derek. Well, it's so good to see you like really ground yourself with Sick the Mag and
Yep.
everything else. What's the future looking like for you, man?
It's really hard to say because I kind of almost have an open book on it.
Yeah.
Honestly, Tom has given me a lot of leash to be able to do what I want, provided that I take care of what he needs me to for Sick, which is basically, not to plug myself, but basically, so I do the events that you and I have spoken about.
Yep.
So I announced that. And then the rest of the year is pretty much mine to do what I want with. So this year, very thankful the fact that I've been able to get brought on board for Texas 2K. So I get to do that in March.
Cool. Nice.
Which shout out to Victor at Bradenton because he recommended me for that. So now I get to do FL2K and Texas
cool.
2K, which
Awesome.
I'm very excited about. There is a guy by the name of Nate Prater who hired me a couple of years ago. He does 2 events a year at Carolina Dragway, so I'm doing both of those. One of them is called Burnouts for Kids, where he last year raised over $30,000 for a couple of children's hospitals in the state of Georgia. So I get to do that stuff, and I'm doing the upcoming NMRA opener at Gainesville, which is next week. It starts on Thursday at Gainesville Raceway. So there's a little bit of everything, but as far as the majority of my time, you can find me pretty much perusing social media, wanting to write stories about enthusiasts and people like you and me that are participating on Dragon Drives, because as I mentioned, there's over 30 of them this year.
Yeah.
So
Where's most of your writing read?
So if you go to Sick the Mag or sickthemagazine.com and you click in our news section, you'll find all the stuff that I put out there. Now, there are things that are added from guest people that jump in. Our editor, Luke, who does our print magazine, he will drop stuff in there every now and then. But that's pretty much my responsibility, is taking care of that daily. So that's the bulk of my time.
Well, dude, it's so cool to see, like, you in the industry are the closest to the fire than you've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people that are, like, really making a change, you're there. And I'm not trying to blow smoke or anything, but, dude, it's all on the back of a lot of hard work that you've done. And it's super cool, man, to see, like, that really taking shape and seeing the fruit of that. You know what I mean? Like, literally from when you were popping in your dad's car from making a pass the first time, you know, and doing the pass out there in South Florida to now announcing events. It's because you've been totally invested in it and fully committed into it. It's paid dividends. You know what I mean? It's super cool to see that.
Yeah,
So-
I appreciate that. I think it's the enthusiast community for the most part. You have to truly be into it. You know, people that are just in it for the short term and not really that invested, and they try to fake it, they're going to get found out about it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And again, it's very easy for me to get behind it because this is the same thing that I did and had no impact on it whatsoever. I was just enjoying my time being able to make these memories. So if I can use what I'm doing to help create better events, help get other people's experiences out there, trust me, I'm very honored and very grateful that I get to do it.
Well, it's got me eager. Like I said, I want to do Sick Week next year, and I don't know. I'm sure you can pull a client into this. Yeah. But let's go do it, dude. It's going to be a blast. I can see it already.
I really feel like you said, all these other Dragon Drives are springing up everywhere, and like, I'm just listening to you explain all this stuff, and like, you know, you're inside. I haven't been to one, you know, and I go to these events that are dying, honestly, like in the way they're made and formatted, and I don't know a better way to put it. That's PC or whatever, but you know, and the way I was listening, I'm like, this is the way it's really moving to, you know, is for everybody in everybody's own way, but like, we used to throw these anniversary shows, and we'd say, if it's got wheels, bring it. You know, like, I'm about, if you're sick about it, do it. And I encourage it, and I think that's where it's really going. Is going to be a lot of iterations, of cruises and shows and drag racing and however that forms.
Yeah. Again, it's the kind of thing where it's very easy to get involved in it. I think the
ultimately it's about the people.
Correct.
Yep.
It is very much so.
Yeah, it's awesome to see you find your groove, dude.
No, I appreciate that. It's,
Absolutely.
Again, very fortunate to be able to do it.
Yep.
So.
Well, thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to kind of transition into is a segment where we kind of talk about people in the industry and just people that have kind of inspired us to do unique things and what has kind of put us to what is cool. So all of us are kind of going to go around the story and share somebody within the industry that kind of involved us in our interests. And I'll start. So not trying to be fanboy or anything, but I will say, remember when Jesse James was doing the bike specials and everything on Discovery Channel?
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that was like, dude, that is totally badass. And then it transitioned into the, what was it, Monster Garage?
Right.
And they would build whatever it was. And okay, now let me go ahead and set the stage. I was working in a studio doing catalog production, and I was like, it's kind of funny now that I look back at it, but my wife was away on vacation in England for a month, and I was like watching Discovery Channel going, oh shit, man, it's Monster Garage. Those guys build a car in a week. She'll be back in a week. I could build a car. So I literally took plastic tarps, covered my carport, and sanded now granted, it's a Volvo 240. Don't laugh.
It's whatever car you get.
I remember
And
that car.
I sanded the living shit out of it and did a custom paint job on it. And I was like, well, what the hell? I'm going to do a custom paint job. When she came home, and I picked her up in her car at the airport, and I was like driving home going, I'll wait till you see the Volvo. So we get home, and I open the garage, and there it is. And she's like, what the hell did you do? But I lowered it. I cut the springs, totally slammed it to the ground. Yeah. And put this two-tone blue and silver paint job on it. And it was, now, granted, it got deemed called the Red Bull car because it was that color scheme.
Yeah.
Whoops.
And literally, in our industry, what that guy established within our industry of going and doing the English wheel and building a bike from scratch, or then transition into Austin Speed World, or the one that he was building really cool cars. Everything that guy seems to touch kind of has that Midas touch of it's golden. You know what I mean? And everybody kind of respects it. And it was like, that's cool as shit. So my person for within the industry was like, all right, what that guy was doing made me transition from being an artist within the catalog industry and going, I really need to seek something in the automotive industry. And that's where I found NPD. And that's where we were able to connect there. So That's my guy. Zip.
I like it.
What do you got?
You sent out the outline, and didn't take me very long. And it's this guy's name is Brian Mikulich or Mikulich. I've never pronounced his last name right, so I apologize. But he used to work at Roadster Shop, and before I had a business, and I was dreaming of having a business, on my lunch break at my collision shop job I was working at, I'd call up shops and see if I could get anybody to talk to me.
Yeah.
And Brian would talk to me.
No shit. That's cool.
And we had a couple conversations. It wasn't many, but it was really like I can do this because Brian at Roadster Shop told me so. And then after I started my business, and then we got a Roadster Shop chassis, and and we talked about things, and it was like more personal though, and I don't know, and he doesn't work there now, and he's gone on. We're friends on Facebook. I was really trying to make his birthday a couple of years ago, and it didn't work out. We haven't met in person to date, but really, it was freaking influential.
That's cool.
That
just being able to
he
make
gave
that
me the time
connection.
of day, and that it was out of his heart,
That's cool.
So.
That's awesome. Derek, somebody in the industry, what would you say?
Well, I'm torn between two people. Rick Schmidt would be one, but I don't think I could really point to him for my current path. So my person I would say in the industry that has gotten me to that gave me the start would be James Lawrence.
Okay.
James was one of three guys, along with Rob Canan, and I'm forgetting the other one. I want to say it was Steve, who currently still works at Pro Media. They started the National Mustang Racers Association.
Okay. Yep.
So James Lawrence actually ended up marrying a girl named Melissa Lawrence that went to school at UF. We met her at a car club thing, and he and I and her are all playing pool one night, and we started talking about stuff, and we started talking about car things and what have you, and he asked me about something that I had just done where I had put a Flowmaster system on my car, and it wasn't designed for my car, and so to help Flowmaster, I rewrote their instructions. So he says, well, have you ever considered writing? No, I haven't done worth a crap in writing. I failed English most of the time, so no, this doesn't work. He says, well, give it a shot. Do what you just did. It's about a subject you like. Rewrite it. You've got photos already that you sent them. So he encourages me to send what should have been a test article, basically, to Fastest Street Car. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to send this away. They're going to pick it apart, tell me it sucks, and that's going to be the end of it. It ended up getting published 3 months later,
No
and
shit.
that was what led to me writing. And I don't think if that would have happened, then none of the rest of the dominoes would have fallen, and I would have been able to get into the whole, working for a racing organization, multiple positions within that. So
That's pretty cool.
James Lawrence, who also created Power Auto Media, which became Speed Vision, which became now Flow Racing, because it
okay.
got sold a couple times.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's the guy that was responsible for all of that. So that would be the guy I would say.
That's pretty cool. That was the crack of the door
Yeah.
to allow you to start writing.
Yep.
That's
I
awesome.
like that. You didn't know you were.
Nope.
No
clue. That was one of those. All right, I'll throw something together.
Yeah.
That's cool. All right, next segment that I have here for us is best tool. All right, so like tools that you go to the box and go to, and the one that I want to bring to attention is, so my dad was a retired phone man, okay? So every time I ever went to the toolbox and grabbed a screwdriver, it was a Klein, a screwdriver. So I got my Klein screwdrivers here. So if I grab a screwdriver and it feels like this, that's a real screwdriver.
Feels right.
Yep. This is like, and I know within the guys that do electrical work and phone work, these are the ones that everybody goes to. And I can just simply say when this is in my hand, it's like, oh, that's a good quality screwdriver.
They do the end right, because really nothing makes me more mad than see, that's cut right. That's
Yep.
Yep.
there's nothing worse than
Probably magnetic too. I'm guessing to help. Yep.
So these are my go-to screwdrivers. The other day, my coworker, he was like, "Hey, our screwdrivers are getting a little worn." I'm like, "Damn it! Don't order anything else
I got
but
this."
Klein screwdrivers." All right, and he's like, "What the hell is that?" I'm like, "Just order them. I'm telling you, they'll be your go-to." And these things, I've never seen the handle deteriorate like this. I mean, now granted, we all use these as chisels. I don't mean to say anything, but they hold up. They're absolutely great tools. And again, the tools that I can, my dad's Klein screwdrivers are still hanging up in the garage, and he uses them to this day, and I stand behind these tools. These are definitely, if you want a screwdriver that's built correctly and can hold up, those are the ones you get.
I like it.
Yep.
Cool.
Zip, what do you got?
Well, it took me a while to find this thing, actually, because this is my body hammer. I want to say 07, 08 I got this, and man, it works perfect.
Yeah.
And it does everything I need it to do. I worked in collision when I bought this.
Yep.
You know, and it's hammered a lot of things, you know, door skin pinch overs and all kinds of shit. And, you know, stretching and everything. And then I opened the shop and, you know, I made door shells and door skins, making wooden bucks and Home Depot Irwin clips and this motherfucker.
Yep.
You know?
Make that shit
and
happen.
then I started growing and I let guys use my tools. And most of my tools are gone now.
Yeah.
And this thing's been floating in his shop. And you know, Thomas, he loved this thing. He was using it all the time. And I'd be like, oh, there's my hammer.
Yep.
You know, and then I asked him this morning, I'm like, where's my hammer? He's like, I don't know. I was like, we got to find my hammer.
Yeah.
I was like, I read the outline, and I need my favorite tool, and this is easily my favorite tool.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't, we looked all over the place. He's like, "Damn, you sure it's not in your box?" I'm like, there ain't no tools left in my box. Everybody lost some things.
They pillaged it.
You know, and then couldn't find it. I had stuff to do, you know, the phone, keyboard, all that stuff. And then he comes in like 20 minutes later. He's like, CJ was organizing, put some hammers in a drawer.
There it is.
I was like, there it is.
Do you remember where you bought that
Nobody
from?
gets to use this ever again.
Never. It hangs on the wall.
It's coming home at the house.
Do you remember where you bought that from?
Probably the Matco truck. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say most likely the Matco
Matco.
truck.
That's
I
cool.
liked Matco over Snap-on when I was doing collision and could afford tools.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, but for all my like cut-off wheels and stuff, that was always Harbor Freight, like you know, $8.99 for a cut-off
Right,
wheel.
right.
I'd just buy 3, and
And just go, what the hell?
after a year, it would seize up, throw it in the garbage,
Yep.
grab another one out of the drawer, and go. I was like, oh, you know, okay, the $249 for this Snap-on one or Matco one, and
Yep.
and a week later, I'm having problems.
Dude, I got a Harbor
Sorry,
Freight.
Matco and Snap-on.
Yeah. I got a Harbor Freight cutoff wheel in my shed that still runs, and I've gone through 2 DeWalt's.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, God damn it, I hate that thing, but it still
It
still
does
lives
it.
on.
Yep.
It's tools that do what you need it to do.
Yep.
It's all, those are 2 things.
Yep.
You know, like the brand and all that,
Yep.
you know, and
It doesn't matter.
I will, on the defense of the other side, you know, there's really expensive tools I have
Oh, yeah.
bought that they do their job.
Oh, yeah, and do
they
it well.
work well, and you can't make that happen for cheaper, and fine.
Yep. Yep. Derek, what's your tool?
Yeah, I'm going to be that guy that goes outside the realm.
Okay, do tell.
Yeah, so when you sent me the outline and I started thinking about it, and I have 2 boxes full of Craftsman tools from the 90s, so back when they were still made in the U.S.
Yeah.
and everything. I remember getting that stuff for Christmas, and I'm sitting there pondering over it, and you go, okay, well, what do you pull that is something you're always going to use? And the problem is I sat there and started thinking about it in relation to what I do, and it's going to sound like a cop-out, but my tool is this. It's my cell phone.
Yeah.
100%.
So let me explain, just so people don't think that I'm just like using this as a oh yeah, I couldn't think of something. So for example, when I'm doing announcing, I actually now have a pronunciation app on my phone just because
Oh, wow.
Some names.
there are
and-
there's
right,
lots
right.
of names. Like if I showed you names, you'd be like, but you don't pronounce that with a J in it, or there's no H, or where are you coming up with that? But the people come tell me. So I have several notes files in there that are covered with people's names. So I know when I go to a racetrack, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get that person's name right because it's there.
Yep.
The second thing, it has weather apps that I can use for every racetrack. That's the kind of thing I can work into what I'm talking about. Third, when I'm writing stuff, when you see 400 cars make a pass, you're not going to remember every single thing that went down. So it's really easy for me to take the camera in that thing, shoot the CompuLink screen, and go, oh, okay, that's the pass I want to talk about in the story I'm going to write tonight.
Yep.
So boom, there we go. Let me use another example. There's a guy who, ironically, I was on the phone with when I pulled up out there. His name's Matt Lamphere. He and I have gotten to know each other just through drag and drives in the last 2 years. He's making a pass at Gainesville during sick week. Makes it through the finish line, makes a good pass, and blows the car up. So I'm like, okay, so we're going to be down for a minute. There's lots of smoke, blah, blah. I'm not even 2 minutes into describing, okay, we don't know what's going on. Thankfully,
Right.
driver's out of the car and okay.
Right.
But I'm sitting here going, okay, I'm going to pull my phone out and probably start playing music. So again, another reason I
Yep.
could use it on the PA system. And Matt has messaged me, hey, I just sent the rods out the bottom of the block. And I'm like, of all the things, you don't need to worry about telling me what's going on right now. But after probably a couple hours, I took a step back and thought about it, and I went, okay, that's information I could relay to the masses that are watching online and are sitting in the grandstands and they don't know what's going on.
Yep.
So I think that, yes, we've talked about how, both on and off air, we've talked about how good and how bad social media can be at times. But the thing that I love still about it, and I will label myself an optimist on this, is it allows us to connect with other people that share our passion no matter where they are.
I agree.
And the advantage of using that for my job, to being able to write about that, is it can be instantaneous. Lots of people don't like getting on the phone, but there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I'm going to tell you about an update that I'm doing to my car for the next race that I'm going to go to in 2 minutes for me to tap out something on the phone. Okay, if you send me that, I can run with that and make a story out of it. Well, if I don't have that, I can't do that. So, it's not the traditional tool that I would pull out of my Craftsman box at home, but this is my tool.
Well played.
Yep. I can't argue that.
So
We are all kind of...
I use that more than this. So
Yeah.
Just to be fair.
me too.
Yeah.
I'm kind of glued to that thing.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, you kind of win on that one. We all use that tool. Absolutely. It's definitely something that, oh my God, I couldn't imagine being without my phone.
Yeah.
And I think we're all kind of in that boat now these days.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. You do your check, keys, wallet, phone.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
You seen the Adam Sandler song? The keys, wallet, phone?
No, I don't
Oh,
remember that.
yeah.
All right. Well, you'll have to watch that later.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know it.
Yeah, I was going to say my dad used something slightly different, and there was no phone involved in it, but it was kind of the stuff rhymed. So I'll leave it at that. It started with spectacles. Go ahead and fill in the blanks.
I think it rhymes with. It's so good, Derek, to see you really finding your groove, man, and
Thank you.
working it out, dude. It's awesome to be a part of that.
Real pleasure to hear.
Yeah. No, like I said, I mean, even if I wasn't going down this road, just being able to meet somebody new in the industry, as far as, somebody that's very passionate about what you do with automobiles, and then Kirk, like I said, you and I being able to work together as long as we did and being able to reconnect and talk about times, both new and old, has been great.
Yep. Well, everybody, go back, check us out on YouTube, and support the show on FACTORYISH.com. We have apparel there and everything, and literally, Derek, it's been a pleasure being a part of this and having you on the show. It's a lot of fun, and man, I'm glad we had that time.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the invite.
All right, man. Thank you.
Yep.